Hey, bruv! What's going on? The Jeff Gerstmann Show is live. And here we are. It's January. You made it. And it's all downhill from here. Now, I don't know what's going on. Hey, hi. We're still in this weird lull where, some people probably went back to work yesterday, but not a lot happening. Starting to get some pre-CES information around, but not really. Yeah, I don't know. We're still in this kind of quiet period. It's nice because I didn't really take a break per se, because I didn't want to. I was like, hey, I'm gonna keep streaming and keep doing my thing. I fucking like doing it. But yeah, yesterday was pretty quiet. Had a pretty quiet New Year around these parts. The kids go to bed early, so there's no I don't know, and we all wake up super early. So right now, well, I've been up since 4 a.m, which is actually not that abnormal for me these days. Sometimes the boy goes back to sleep, sometimes he doesn't. So sometimes I get a little bit of sleep after 4 a.m. Sometimes I don't. Yeah. So the idea of hey, let's stay up until midnight and whatever. I was like, I saw the ball drop in New York at 9:00 our time, and that was enough. I was good. I stayed up for another hour to watch it hit midnight in New Orleans and so on and so forth. But, I found myself going it's just literally just another day. This whole New Year thing is a scam. But, yeah, I don't know. I think a part of that is you get to a certain, I think it is the parenting, honestly. I was gonna say you get to a certain age, but I think it is just, these kids wake up when they wake up, and they're not gonna be like, oh, you stayed up till midnight so you could watch TV, okay, we'll sleep in and be good. No, none of that. So yes, they didn't. Yes, this is true. Rec Roulette says they didn't even let Anderson Cooper get drunk this year, and I feel like I witnessed his protest. I don't know if you caught this. I don't know if you were watching. I don't know if you're watching the CNN's awesome New Year's coverage. But so they had Brian Cox, the actor of Chain Reaction fame. You may know him from such hit films as Chain Reaction and Glimmer Man. I love Chain Reaction. It is one of my favorite Keanu Reeves films, and more relevant than ever. Honestly, we love Brian Cox here at the program, and so he's there as they're doing the count. He's there, maybe not long after midnight, but he's that's their guest. So, they got Brian Cox out there in New York to be like, yeah, fuck, I'm Brian Cox. What the fuck? You want some? Come at me. And he said, at one point, Brian goes, hey, yeah, so, I told my wife I'd mention it, that the things happening in Iran are terrible, and people are being hung and like a serious moment, hey, the world is. And it was oh, yeah, man. Okay, cool. But Anderson Cooper gets this information, and instead of going yes, you're right, it is fucking terrible. It is absolutely awful what's happening. He then proceeds to be and then when they hang people, they do this, and proceeds to go into it's 12:05. He's hey, Happy New Year. And when they hang people, they let them, they do this, and so they don't die immediately. So it's a really extra painful type of hanging. It's what the fuck am I watching? What the fuck am I watching? It's and I don't mean to detract from yes, that's a real issue. Obviously, that's a real thing that's happening. I'm not yes, definitely. But it was just such an insane pivot to be hey, Happy New Year. All right, listen. I'm Anderson Cooper. I know how people get hung. It was fucking. And so like I watched that and thought like, yeah, they should let him drink. that was I came away from it going like, yeah, they should absolutely let these guys drink on the air again, because that's wow. It was really it's some amazing little bit of tape there. Yeah, so I don't know, the whole New Year thing is I don't know. I like it, but it's entered into the pantheon the same way I used to really like the 4th of July, and now I'm kind of like a little soft on it. It is literally because like we got kids, and I don't want fireworks to wake them up, and like it's hard enough to get them to go to sleep, and and my wife is a very light sleeper as well, and so now I've come to be like, oh, fucking fireworks, god damn it. I suppose that's a penance of sorts for the number of years on those holidays that I was like, let's go. And someone says, you realize it's 2:30 in the morning, right? And I'm like, yes, let's go throw explosives in a sewer drain. It'll make noise for blocks. So, I did it to myself. But that's fine. I'm willing to accept that. And there's a part of me that wants to get back to it. I like, man, I could really go for blowing things up. Is that a weird thing to say? But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. But yeah, Happy New Year, everybody. And I'm kind of prepared to double fist some drinks here. And see how all that goes. I popped this open last week. Someone sent this, and I'm sorry. It was just the letter C was on the thank you note. And they sent a case of this. I guess this is the Amazon House brand energy drink. Solimo Red Energy Drink, low calorie, no sugar, with caffeine. And sugar alcohol, 2 grams. All right. And so I thought we would add this to the drink ranking list. We've got to keep building the list. So let's see here. Let's get the list up where we can see it real quick like here. Where do I have that hidden? There it is. We'll paste it over here. As you can see, we've got 54 entries on the list, from Rockstar Zero Fruit Punch all the way down to G Fuel Tetris Blast. And now let's check this out. Let's see what this is all about. Aren't I running out of energy drinks soon? I don't know. I feel like there are brands that are just going to keep going under, and new ones get launched all the time, right? So I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm going to run out, when I will run out. I know there are some flavors of Ghosts that are not on the list. There are definitely some flavors of Celsius that are not on the list, but I'm not exactly looking forward to any of that. Do I chill all energy drinks prior to tasting? Yes, I do. Usually I'll put them in the freezer before the show to get them cold fast. Is regular Red Bull on the list? No, so this is a list of 0/low calorie energy drinks. So regular Red Bull would not be on the list. Regular Red Bull is like it's the gold standard, it's maybe not the tastiest drink in the world. It's definitely not the most energetic, energy-giving drink in the world, but it is like regular ass Red Bull is just solid. It's great. I like what it does for me. But okay, we were talking about this last week a little bit, but just to quickly get into it. All the stuff that's on shelves now, especially in this space, in the low calorie, no calorie space, half of this shit is like fucking rebadged pre-workout. You know, it is like Ghost makes protein powder, and G Fuel used to be powder only, and obviously they've been marketing to the gamer crowd for a good long time. But like C4 and Ghost in particular, like this is stuff that was being sold as pre-workout. And then they decided, oh, what if we actually, instead of selling that as a powder, we sold it in a can and put it at the 7-Eleven. We could sell it for freaking $3 a can instead of what we're selling the powders for. Like, the market expanded to allow for that. And so you had all these like kind of regular energy drinks, and then suddenly like you had Bang and Rain and Ghost and C4 and some of this other stuff hitting shelves that was like an extra level of intensity. Even Rockstar has like their like Rockstar X-Durance drinks that are generally like in the 300 milligram of caffeine range, and they just have a lot of other stuff in them. Whether that stuff does anything or not, I mean, I'm not a scientist in energy drinks, at least professionally. But that stuff, Red Bull to me is smooth. It's smooth drinking. The energy curve on it is like, yes. Here we yeah. It's like it's quality wise, it's more mid to top shelf kind of energy drink. It's the good stuff. But some of this other C4 and the energy on it is like you just fucking did like you're doing rails of broken glass. It just like it's such a more harsh thing. But I kind of like that. If that makes any sense, that's probably not good, right? Yeah, it's the other energy drink stuff is like way rougher. Not necessarily rough on your system, but like you feel it in like a frantic fight or flight, like what are we doing after this? Kind of way. And it's there's an edge to that I kind of appreciate. And so Red Bull doesn't have that. Red Bull is like the thinking man's, it's like it's Red Bull feels like the good stuff, but also I don't deserve the good stuff. If that makes any sense. I don't know. All I know is I drink one a day. And generally speaking, don't drink coffee. But my wife went for coffee this morning, and I said, get me one. I've been up forever. So yeah. So let's try this. This, as I understand it, is not that potent. In fine print over on the side here, I believe it says it has like 152 milligrams of caffeine. It smells very faint. It smells like watered down. It's a very faint Red Bull smell. It smells like, hey, there used to be Red Bull here, but it's long gone. Okay, well, let's. Did I drink it? It doesn't taste like anything. It's Yeah, it's really mild. It's really mild. There's kind of it's a little bit of the Red Bull flavor, but it's not strong. And that's kind of the other thing that a lot of these drinks are doing. If you'll notice that, like, you know, all this pre-workout, like all of the flavors are like ultra sweet marshmallow and, oh, here's a sour one. Like they're trying to go with these very potent flavors, generally speaking, because they have so many chemicals they need to cover up. They're like, we need like a really crazy sweet flavor to cover up all of the nightmare fuel we're packing into these cans. And so, yeah, that's a weird. And this, by comparison, doesn't taste like much of anything. And I don't know what to make of that. That's really strange. It's like it's okay. You could drink it, but there's like a bit of there's a bit of a sharpness on the tongue up front that doesn't go anywhere. It's just like, here you go, bat, and you're like, oh, that's the flavor, and then there's nothing behind it. I mean, that's interesting because it's like it makes it very smooth in a weird way. But it's not, you know, I don't know. This is okay. I want a flavor in my drinks, and this is just red energy drink, which I assume they're meaning when they write red energy drink on a label. I assume they are trying to say Red Bull, but it's like they forgot to put the stuff in it. It's weird. That's very weird. And it sounds like as I started drinking this, Twitch started getting crazy. I see a lot of people in chat saying that like all the panels around the stream are blanking out. It's because I'm saying mild things about an Amazon-owned energy drink, isn't it? They're coming for me. The Bezos boys are going to bust through my window. But don't worry, because the guns they brought are like fake knockoffs that they accidentally bought off Amazon, and they don't actually work. So we'll be okay. You could drink this. In fact, I'm going to say this is a solid energy drink for people who don't like energy drinks, because most of the flavor is not there. You know, it's not like it tastes. It's not like when they sold caffeinated water. It's not just that. There is. It is an extremely mild Red Bull-esque flavor, is what I would say. It's not very strong. It does not linger on the tongue. It comes and goes. It's very light. And some folks might find that refreshing if they just don't like the taste of energy drinks, I guess. But they need energy drinks. So, I don't know. There's value in that for someone. For me, it's kind of, I believe mid is the word that people use these days. Well, where does that land it? That's a really hard thing to quantify compared to, because again, so many of these other drinks, the problems with them are like flavor is bad. Like the problem with G Fuel Tetris Blast was that the flavor of it was like you were sucking off a leaking battery, mixed with like devil fruit flavor. You know, PewDiePie it was acceptable to put PewDiePie in my mouth, so much so that I bought a second one. It's because it's inoffensive, right? This is just, here's an inoffensive energy drink. And where does that land it? Because like I feel like our offensive to inoffensive line is somewhere down around here. that Bang Sour Heads is maybe the dividing line between acceptable and unacceptable, and everything below here is straight garbage. I would rather drink this than Celsius, though. That's for sure. Because Celsius tastes bad. So actually, maybe our dividing line is here at number 45. Maybe this is the bad stuff. Zoa Fruit Punch is actually also relatively inoffensive in the grand scheme of things. It's just kind of whatever. It doesn't taste good, but it is not like, blah, get this out of my mouth, bad the way some of these other ones are. So maybe it actually rides around here. And it is going for a similar flavor as the kind of throwback Rockstar, which was meant to be like the original, obviously like the original Rockstar, which as a Red Bull fan, I don't like original Rockstar. Even I like I like a lot of Rockstar's flavors, but regular ass Rockstar, it tastes like Red Bull you got at a bar. And they're like, yes, we have Red Bull. Here it is. Here's your Red Bull, wink, wink. And they give you whatever the fuck they got. And it's usually Rockstar or some sub Rockstar garbage. Like it tastes sort of like Red Bull, but bad. So with that in mind, I'm going to say that we're right about, I'd probably take it over Bang Delish Strawberry Kiss, honestly. But I'd probably drink a PewDiePie before I would drink more of these. Of course, we have a case of them, so I will be drinking more of these. So we're going to call it our new number 42. Solimo Red Energy Drink. Now let's paste that in there. So if you're listening on audio and you can't see the list, we have a list of 55 beverages here. And this Solimo Red Energy Drink just entered the charts at where'd it go? Number 42, which is not as bad as I thought it would be. But, that's my feeling on this drink. It is I'll read out the top 10 for you if you are in your car and you are not if you are not watching the video version, which most of you are not. Here's the top 10 where it stands right now. We've had some relatively recent shakeups in the top 10, but it is mostly solid. Number 1, Rockstar Zero Fruit Punch. You can't go wrong with it. It does not have the most caffeine of any drink, but I think it tastes fantastic. It's a solid middle of the road energy. Love the way it tastes. Ghost Orange Cream. Outstanding. Ghost is a little advanced. Ghost might fuck you up if you are not used to drinking these things. Ghost you might be quote unquote on one after you drink a Ghost, which is weird because Ghost only has 200 milligrams of caffeine. I don't know what else they're putting in Ghost. I don't want to know. It's a lot of vitamin B6. Wink, wink. Number 3, we have Rain Orange Dreamsicle. This is, again, it's my list, right? So personal preference is going to play a role here. I think that orange cream sodas, any of these both of these drinks taste vaguely like baby aspirin, and I love baby aspirin. Let me tell you. This could be a toss-up, honestly. If you had me drink these on a different day, Rain could pull ahead of Ghost, but I think the Ghost flavor is a little bit better than Rain. But I believe Rain is a 300 milligram drink. And so that's going to maybe hit you differently. At number 4, we've got Ghost Sour Patch Kids Red Berry. The thing I like about the Ghost drinks is that they all hit you exactly the same. The energy formula or whatever is pretty much like solid. It's consistent. The don't let the Sour Patch Kids name. There's another Sour Patch Kids flavor out there that I don't think I've tried. But I can only find it by the case, and so I don't want to do that. The Sour Patch Kids Red Berry is not especially sour, I will say. So, but I guess a lot of people would also say that Sour Patch Kids in general are not actually all that sour. So maybe it's pretty right on. After that, we have Rain Tropical Storm, which I believe is an Amazon exclusive flavor. At number 6 is C4's Starburst Cherry. They went and did a deal with Starburst. It tastes like cherry Starburst. They did a pretty good job of mimicking the flavor of those waxy ass Starburst candies. I like Starburst, but texturally they're creepy. At number 7 is Bang Cherry Blade Lemonade. That's just I remember that being, that's a pretty light a light beverage. The lemonade, the cherry, kind of a good mix. At 8, we've got Rockstar Recovery Lemonade. Now, the problem with the Rockstar Recoveries, and it's not so much a problem, but it makes it different from everything else on this list. The Rockstar Recoveries are not carbonated, and they are a lower caffeine count. So it's a good morning beverage. You know, if you don't want to fucking mainline go crazy before your commute, which at past a certain point, I definitely did. The Rockstar Recovery Lemonade, you can just chug those things. They're just gone because of the lack of carbonation. But I as a lemonade lover, I think it's just a tremendous drink. And it was my go-to for a good long time. The Rockstar Recoveries. The Rockstar Recoveries are actually what got me into non-Red Bull energy drinks. Was buying those. And they're good. You can get them in the big old cans, the big battery-shaped cans with the twist-off tops. If they still make those, you know, because those are going to obviously have more. If you drink more, it does more. That's just science. At number 9 is Rockstar Tangerine Mandarin Guava Strawberry. This was a drink they launched as a mystery flavor. Originally, it was just Rockstar #TMGS because, I don't know, fuck everything. They've added it to it is now around, I guess, permanently under its full name, no longer a mystery flavor. It's a fun collection of fruit flavors. And number 10 is Bang Black Cherry Vanilla. I like a cherry vanilla soda. You know, you go to like a Coke Freestyle machine or something like that. You get like a cherry vanilla Coke or something. You know, like the Bang Black Cherry Vanilla is pretty good. And as a little extra bonus here at number 11, C4 Frozen Bombsicle, which I thought was pretty good. Yeah. And it goes on from there. Again, at the bottom of the list is G Fuel's Tetris Blast, a Tetris-themed energy drink, which I know when I hear that, I'm like, well, I've got to try that. Because what the fuck does Tetris taste like? And they answered the question by saying, oh, it tastes like fucking poison. And, yeah. No, thank you. Let's see here. Jamal in the chat says, this is the part of the podcast where we coffee drinkers politely nod and sit quietly. Yeah, because you're fucking cowards. Coffee ain't enough, man. I went and got the most nitro weird cold brew. The black blood of the earth. Drank some of that. And that was like, okay, yeah, that hits you. What is this? What is this? This is a triple Starbucks drink here. I got an extra shot in it. Might as well be drinking fucking water over here. We need more. We deserve more. It's 2023. Who has time for coffee? When you could be getting so much more done. What fun. All right, let's take a break. Let's take a break so I can go poop my guts out. No, I closed the run of show, so I don't know what we're coming back. We're gonna come back. We're gonna talk about video games. We'll come back. We'll talk about video games. How about that? Sit tight. Be back in a few minutes. New year, new you, right? All right. Well, how you gonna do it? And let me give you step 1 here. Why don't you take your shaving experience, whatever it is you're doing to shave, in the morning, and toss it. Get rid of it. Toss in the garbage. Throw it in the bammer. And move on to something new and exciting with an old school twist. That's Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that's made parts for the International Space Station and the Mars rover, and now they're bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. They're building this well-machined razor handle that takes these, very standard razor blades and grips them tight. These razor blade handles have got the Gorilla Grip, and it holds them in place. Other razor blades, they can be like a diving board. They'll wobble around, and that wobble is going to nick you up, cut you up, scrape you up. No, not with Henson Shavings devices. It is going to clamp down on that blade, and it's got precise machining that basically makes these metal razors extend just 0.0013 inches. That's less than the thickness of a human hair. That means you've got a secure and stable blade and a vibration-free shave. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream and makes clogging virtually impossible. Henson Shavings out there trying to build the best razor, not the best razor business. This isn't some plastic mess. This isn't some subscription service. They don't have proprietary blades. It just works with standard dual-edged blades. So it gives you that old school shave with the benefits of new school technology. So once you own that Henson razor, it's like what? I don't know, $3-5 a year to replace the blades? That's a lot cheaper than, even, it's like money and time, right? I mean, the razors are one of the most shoplifted things at stores. So now all the stores have them behind, plexiglass. You've got to push a button, let someone come over with a vest. You got to talk to someone in a vest with their keys. And they've got to, you got to get the razors out. Who has the time? Not me. Henson razors, they will ship that right to your door. And they will sell you the blades as well. You can get those blades anywhere, but they will sell you blades. In fact, with this deal, you won't even have to worry about blades for like 2 years, okay? It's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that'll last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/Jeff to pick the razor for you and use the code Jeff to get 2 years worth of blades for free with your razor. Just make sure to add the blades to your cart. That's the, you get the razor and then you get the blades. You put the blades in the cart. That makes the offer work. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/Jeff and use the code Jeff. All right, we're back, and it just seems like as we're live here, it seems like the Twitch website is on fire. It is a hellscape nightmare, and so I'm gonna go. I put my phone up here, and I'm gonna go. We're going live on TikTok. Also, we're gonna go live on TikTok. What does this say? Modify your live. One of my least favorite things is when live is used as a noun. And that's just, I don't know. That is probably a generational thing. But when people he was doing a live, like, no, he fucking wasn't. So if you go follow me at Fred Durst 2000 on TikTok, and I don't know, my phone is pointed at me. All right, let's get into the news. No, I'm sorry. Let's get into talking about video games. I still have the energy drink list up here. So, obviously, not a ton out, but I did play some more Melatonin. And, if you haven't seen Melatonin, give it a look. It is a very so Melatonin, from a gameplay perspective, is basically Rhythm Heaven. It is definitely trying to be a Rhythm Heaven-esque video game in terms of how the levels are structured and how it's like, we've got a few different changes on the rhythm and how the buttons are pressed, and you'll have to kind of change things up over the course of this song, over the course of this level. We'll do a thing that obscures the visuals, so you'll have to do it from memory or from hearing the audio as opposed to watching the video part of it play out. Like, it is like a textbook. Like, they sat down and took a look at some Rhythm Heaven and went like, yes, okay, so we're going to do this, and this. And they did it. I don't know that I think it quite has the fun and flavor and the overall style of a proper Rhythm Heaven game, but it mimics it very well. It's got its own visual style going on, and I do think it's pretty neat. I've only played a handful of levels, so I haven't played all the way through it. But you know, it is kind of it's satisfying a certain itch, right? So it is kind of, you know, when was the last time there was a Rhythm Heaven game? When was the last time? It was like a 3DS game, right? So it's been years now since there was a good proper real Rhythm Heaven game out, and so this is kind of scratching that itch for me really well, even if it's like I don't think it's as good as a proper Rhythm Heaven game. But it's on Steam. I think it is also, I believe it is also on Switch. I should look. Let's look real quick here before we okay, yeah, it is on Steam, it is on Switch. I don't know if it is anywhere else. Oh, okay, yeah. No, that is it. It is on Mac apparently. Sure. Why not? So yeah, that's Melatonin. It's a video game. And then the only other thing I think I really haven't really talked about much is Halo Infinite. They are always update. Well, I don't know. They're not updating it enough, right? But they did put out their winter update and added the Forge mode finally after beta testing that for a good long time and everything. But I didn't really mess with it. I think when Forge came out, I loaded it up and loaded it into the Forge and went like, okay, yeah, cool. All right. Yeah, I'm not really, I don't think I'm going to really have time to like go, make a map or anything. Even in the like Halo 3 Forge mode, the only thing I ever really did is make like a one of those fusion core things. I would make it spawn in the air, and so it would fall and explode, and it would spawn, and so you'd have these like continually spawning exploding blocks just falling over and over again, and then I would do dumb physics stuff with it. I never really played custom games or got too much into that past like the week of release, basically. So they've added a custom games browser with this as well, so you can kind of look through and see like who's playing what and what's going on. It's funny when I mute the microphone to cough. Now that now that I have my phone here and we're also live on TikTok, I can't mute that. So I hope you heard that good cough over on TikTok. That's the exclusive TikTok experience. Anyway, the Halo Infinite custom games browser is great because it lets you actually play these with other players, and in the past you couldn't really do matchmaking for some of that stuff, and so you never really had great ways to experience it the way it was meant to be experienced unless you had a group of people that was also willing to try out these custom games with you. And so the custom games browser is awesome because you can look at a big list and be like, oh, someone's playing Slayer on a map that is meant to look like a Kmart. There's a Kmart map, there's a Walmart map, but like, it's not. I posted it to Twitter last night. I was like, oh, check this out. It's cool that someone made, because it was reminiscent of old style shooter maps where they're just like, check it out. I made a store. I made a Best Buy. I made a this. And then a couple people were like, oh man, they made I don't know if that's in good. I was like, oh yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. But also it's like a giant open space with warthogs driving around it, and it's full of Halo shit. You don't look at it and go like, oh man, this is meant to look like a realistic Kmart. That's not good. This is a murder simulator. But someone was playing like a low gravity. So it actually gave me real big Unreal Tournament vibes because someone was playing like a fast moving low gravity game of Halo inside this giant fake department store. I was like, yes, this is the vibe. This is the level lord fucking vibe, man. We need this. This is what's missing from shooters. And sure enough, someone had remade Deck 16, the Unreal Tournament map, in Halo Forge. And that's cool as hell. So I played some of that, and people there are like remixed versions of weapons in there and stuff that I wasn't really I didn't play quite enough to really get a good sense of how many of those there were. But, different custom games can come with different rule sets in terms of speed and weapon configurations and a lot of stuff like that. So it's really fucking neat to see. And of course, Call of Duty maps are also, this is the thing that I saw that I was like, oh shit, I have not launched Halo Infinite in a while, is someone made Shipment, the Call of Duty map, inside of Halo Forge. And I was like, I want to see that. And I didn't find a game running on that map, but I was able to find it in the Forge stuff and load into it and look around, and like, yeah, it's a reasonable facsimile of the Call of Duty map Shipment. The Nuketown, someone made Nuketown as well. High Rise from, was that Modern Warfare 2? Was in there. But the scale on a lot of that stuff is all weird. I don't know if it's just because you can't make doorways that are the right size, but it was like if Shipment was 50% larger than it is in Call of Duty, and so like the ceiling on the shipping crates and stuff, is much higher, and the doorways are much wider, and everything. But it was really neat to go through and just see what people have been making. There's a huge variety, and there's like a Super Mario 64 like Princess's Castle map in there. So if you haven't looked at Halo Infinite in a while, and I'm guessing, it seems like a lot of people have moved on from it, that is there. So you should go check. You should go check that out, and give that a look. It is part of the multiplayer, so I guess that means it's free technically. The campaign was the part that they decided to charge for. I mean, unless you have Game Pass. So I guess you could just go download that and mess around if you wanted to. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by that. I guess I just wish that you could earn XP and work on your battle pass while playing custom games. I get why they don't do that, because then people would build custom games that were built to cheat, and they'd find ways for you to grind out XP and grind out a full battle pass in an hour or something insane like that. But I would probably much rather just fuck around in the custom games than play the maps that are in proper Halo at this point, because the big problem with Halo Infinite is that it just doesn't have enough content. And so the idea of like, oh man, here's a bunch of new maps, or a bunch of remakes of maps and new maps and everything else, I would much rather do that. And be able to work on these battle passes and be able to unlock these cosmetics and do all this other stuff, than having to go and get in their proper hoppers and play that way. And that's, they need more content in that game, and Forge seems to be generating quite a bit of it. But yeah, there you go. So yeah, I would say give that a look. It's free. It's free, and it's Halo, so it's fun to mess around with the rules of Halo. That was always the thing, even though I didn't play a ton of matches in Forge mode. That when it first came out, we messed around with Forge mode a lot and played a bunch of custom games, and it was like, this is really neat. And then kind of never messed with it much again, because I just didn't know that many people that wanted to keep playing Halo 3. So they didn't, and so I was like, okay, I guess I'll just make these things blow up over and over again. Oh well. So yeah, give that a look. Why don't we get into the news? Hitman is going to go through a change. The Hitman metamorphosis continues. This is something that when this all first came out, this was a bit of a problem, right? When Hitman 3 first launched on PC, there was a whole thing of like, hey, if you bought Hitman 2 on Steam, Hitman 3 is an Epic exclusive, and Hitman 1 is over here doing... And so getting all of Hitman 1, 2, and 3 together in one package, because that's how they built the game in such a way that the Hitman 1 and 2 maps would come into Hitman 3 and you'd be able to play them there. Getting all of that to line up required this kind of profile level. You had to go sign up for a Hitman account and the IO Interactive account or whatever. And then even then at launch, that stuff was all broken. And so I think I lost some amount of progress in Hitman 2 levels when I put it all together. Obviously those were like launch woes that got sorted out, and I'm sure that, you know, that process, once the servers weren't breaking all the time past launch day, was probably not that big of a deal. But Hitman, you know, like they had different publishers for the different games, and so like getting all of the Hitman together was kind of a mess. They're aiming, it looks like they're looking to kind of reduce that mess a little bit further now. On January 26th, Hitman 3 is going to be rebranded as Hitman World of Assassination, which is the name they've been using for a while elsewhere. And that will be, basically they'll have their existing Access Pass system that'll include Hitman 1 and 2, but also current Hitman 3 owners will get a free upgrade to Hitman World of Assassination on all platforms. That is according to Eurogamer. And so they're simplifying the way it gets purchased. They're building a standard version of the game. So basically, like, anyone buying Hitman 3 going forward is going to be buying the Hitman trilogy. And so they're going to have a $70 version of the game that's the standard version that will come with Hitman 3, along with the Hitman 1 Game of the Year Access Pass and the Hitman 2 Standard Access Pass. Then they will also sell a deluxe pack, which is a DLC pack for $30. That will have the Hitman 3 Seven Deadly Sins collection and the Hitman 2 Expansion Access Pass. I'm going to say the word pass about 20 more times. This doesn't actually sound less confusing now that I'm like walking through it and saying it all out loud, does it? But the upshot is that if you own some of this stuff but not all of it, on Steam, they will add hey, add the here are the things that you don't already own, and you can click this button to complete your set or whatever. And the 3 DLCs that comprise the deluxe pack will be available for $10 each on consoles. And this is a great sentence. I have to read it with the quotes, because as I've just read through this stuff and just been like, what? IO Interactive hopes, and this is for the Eurogamer story again, IO Interactive hopes this new streamlined approach to purchasing Hitman's modern trilogy will make everything, quote, simple and straightforward for consumers going forward. It'll be streamlined in the sense that, like, they will pack it all together and you won't have to necessarily go merge your accounts in to get the Hitman 2 and 1 stuff. But also, I feel anyone that was going to do that has probably done it already, right? They've probably already gone through that upgrade process. So really, it's just like, hey, if you're a new purchaser of Hitman 3, you'll get the 1 and 2 stuff by default. And then if you want the additional DLC, then there's a way for you to get that as well. So, yeah. That's a hell of a, I mean, you know, like, honestly, them repricing it at $70 like it was a modern release of a modern game initially sounds kind of like, hey, wait a minute. But, you know, this is them selling a full trilogy's worth of content. And, and also that Hitman trilogy is some of the most amazing video gaming I think you can do over the last 5 years. What has it been? Is Hitman 1 more than 5 years old now? That would be a real tragedy. But yeah, you know, the ability to get like 3 Hitman games worth of content for $70 actually does sound pretty good. If you didn't own any of it. If you didn't own any of it, that's almost too much fucking Hitman. And that's like a where do I start level of Hitman, but they do build it in such a way that they kind of walk you through it in a decent order. So yeah, that's not too bad. And then the DLC stuff. I have not messed with the 7 Deadly Sins stuff from Hitman 3, and yeah, I don't know. When it came to Hitman 3, I was like, this is an awesome video game, but also I played so much Hitman 1 and 2 that I kind of never made it through every single thing in Hitman 3, or at least like didn't go back to every level as many times as I did with Hitman 1 and Hitman 2. Which is not to say that Hitman 3 is like a worse video game. It was just like, man, I have played a fucking lot of Hitman. And if you have not played a lot of Hitman, I guess my recommendation would be you should play a lot of Hitman. It's they have polished that engine up over the course of those 3 games. So going back and playing the Hitman 1 levels in the Hitman 3 kind of upgraded version of the engine and stuff is really neat. Those are just great video games. And even the VR stuff, as corny as it is and as like half-baked as it is, it's kind of awesome how fucking clunky and weird it is. In its own way. It's I don't know. The Hitman VR stuff is like, I guess, like the right kind of shitty. That's not a very kind way of putting it, but it's fun. It's a goof, but it's a fun little goof. We've got some NVIDIA news here. GeForce Now, their cloud streaming service, is going to see an upgrade according to Video Games Chronicle. And this means the highest tier of this service. So GeForce Now is broke up into 3 separate tiers. There's a free tier, there's a $10 a month tier, and a $20 a month tier. So this is only affecting the $20 a month tier, the ultimate tier. But later this month, they're going to be upgrading the cloud machines you get from that service to be running on 4080s, whereas I believe they are currently running on 3070s. No, they're 3080s. So if you want to do a cloud game thing, that will and want to pay $20 a month for it, that is, you will be able to play it on 4080s, and I guess this will include the ability to stream games at up to 240 frames per second with ray tracing, DLSS 3, and NVIDIA Reflex, which will it's really weird to think about the concept of like these latency reducing technologies in the context of like, yeah, but it's running on the cloud. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how that pans out. So over the weekend, I started messing around with GeForce Now. I turned on my TV. I bought one of these. I bought an LG. I guess like what? Not was it last year? I guess it was last year. I turned on my TV, and my TV is cluttered with advertising. Every time I turned it on, there's like it would show like 9 different notifications at the bottom of the screen. One of them was like, "Hey, some channels are going to be disappearing from the LG channels thing," and a lot of stupid stuff like that. And or like one of them was like, "Have you heard of this Google Stadia? It's going to be discontinued." I was like, "Fucking stop." The best part though is that in the notification for the discontinuation of the Google Stadia service, they misspelled Stadia, which is pretty great. And anyway, once I waded through all of the notifications and found out like, oh, here, how do I get in here and turn this shit off and eliminate these notifications? And there was one in there that was like, "Hey, do you want 6 months of GeForce Now? Go to the store." I was like, "Oh, huh. Actually, sure. Why not? I guess I'll take 6 months of GeForce Now. Why wouldn't I?" So I went into the store on my television, and in there was a code that you could redeem on a website to do this. And it was like, jump through the hoops. And so I have 6 months of subscription to the middle tier, the $10 tier. They didn't even make me put in a credit card, which is nice. So now I have access to the kind of the 1080p version of GeForce Now. It's not this one that they're talking up like, oh, it's gonna run on 4080s and all that shit. This stuff runs at 1080. It does have some kind of ray tracing, but it is it is not their highest end service. And so I installed it over here on the PC. They have a client that you install, and you can run it in a web browser, I guess, too. So this is how, some people are using this to, I guess, play Fortnite on their phone, on their iPhone, because you can run it in the browser there. But I don't know. I figured like, fuck it, man. This is like the one cloud service I haven't tried. Let's see what this is all about, and launched it. You know what? It's not bad in terms of latency and in terms of how it feels. It's not bad. I played Counter-Strike Go. I was like, what's going to be the fucking worst possible thing to play on this? I was like, oh yeah, CS:GO, of course. Like, it's going to be full of murderers murdering me, and I'm going to be too latent to be able to stop them. And it wasn't bad. It actually felt okay in terms of, because it, like moving a mouse is so like immediate. You're so connected. Like, you can fudge it with a controller because you can be like, oh, it's low sensitivity, and that's why it kind of sucks. But I don't know. Playing it with a mouse and keyboard and playing CS:GO, I was like, this is not bad. This feels better than Stadia did. This feels better than Amazon Luna did. This feels better than some of the xCloud stuff that I've tried did. This is not bad. And I was able to get some kills in and stuff that you wouldn't think you'd be able to do over a cloud stream. And I was kind of surprised. I was like, this seems like a little bit tighter, a little bit like snappier than some of those other services. The catch, well, I don't know. The catch is that you still buy the games, right? The catch is that it's like your library comes in from Steam, but not all of it, because it doesn't support everything. It supports about 1,500 games, 1,550, somewhere in that realm. And it supports games across the Ubisoft launcher, the Epic Game Store, and Steam. And so I had about 300 of those games already. And yeah, it's a situation where you're like, oh, like this would be cool. I could play Call of Duty. Oh, right. Call of Duty is not supported because Activision's like, fuck that. So yeah. So you kind of just can't. There's just a bunch of games it's not just here's your Steam library in the cloud. It's like, here's a selection of your Steam library in the cloud. And there weren't that many games on the list that I was like, oh, I'm dying to play more of this, so it kind of, your mileage may vary on that front. Arcade Paradise was in there. I was able to load that up and mess with that a little bit. They put out that new DLC. They put Kung Fury into an arcade cabinet in Arcade Paradise, which is a neat idea. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think I would pay $20 a month for that service. Is the cat like, even like, oh, it's running on a 4080 in the cloud, and I guess if you. But again, I've got a 4090 here, so what would I need with a cloud 4080, right? But so people in certain situations about that want to play PC versions of games but don't want to upgrade their PC, or they want to play on a laptop, they want to play on the road, whatever. Like, there are use cases for that make total sense, but at the same time, like the split of my Steam library that came in was not super impressive to me. It was just like, okay, yeah, here's a button. Like, yeah, yes, I own these games. I'm not actively playing any of these games, so it wasn't really especially useful on that front, but it seems like it works, which is neat. And it's another way to play those games. So, you can play them locally, you can play them on the road. It's, since it is just a Steam client, you are kind of, your Steam Cloud stuff is going to come in, like all that shit's going to come in. I'll probably try it on a phone at some point. This phone, in fact. Hi. People are saying that Twitch is just like extra super on fire. Yeah. So if you can see this, then I'm, well, I don't know. Maybe should I tweet something? Because that's I don't know. Let's do that real quick. Let's tweet something that, hey, we're live over here, and maybe people will find it that way. I don't know. Will people find it that way? I went to the URL I was going to tweet, and it's not there. So I don't know. Well, okay. I'm just going to tweet something real quick here. Like, I'm also streaming on TikTok. Anyway, yeah, anyway, pleasantly surprised by the quality of GeForce Now, I guess I would say. And that was with the mid tier of the service, just in terms of raw latency. I'll probably try. I'll try Destiny on it because I did play a fair amount of Destiny on Stadia, and it was like, hey, you could do this. You could play. I would not go play competitive multiplayer. I would probably not do a raid, but I'm sure some people did, and I'm sure they probably did fine with it. But I would probably rather not. But I'll be curious to see how that feels with a controller on GeForce Now as opposed to how it felt, because I did play, I don't know, maybe 10 hours of it or something on Stadia on of Destiny 2. It was a nice way to just like if I was at work or something on my laptop, I was like, oh, I can just pop in real quick and do my, like, cash in a quest or a bounty or something, if I had to do something simple. What else is going on? All right. Also, NVIDIA is going to launch the RTX 4070 Ti this week. This is remember when they said they were going to put out the 12 gigabyte 4080, and then they were like, we're not going to do that. We're actually just going to not do that. We're going to unlaunch. We're going to unannounce the 12 gig 4080. And then people were wondering, like, oh, was there some problem with it, or did they just need to rename it because it was confusing to have two different cards being called the 4080, especially when this one was so much reduced compared to the other 4080. It was like there was fewer CUDA cores, like whatever it was. And so this is that card, but they are calling it a 4070 Ti, which is a much more responsible way to name it. And a much more honest way to name this card than to call them both 4080s. That was a crummy way to go. This is the right move on their part, just from an honesty perspective. And so this 4070 Ti is faster than a 3090 Ti. It'll be available in 2 days. So it'll be available on Thursday. And it will go for $799, which is a lot of money. All of these 40 series cards are fucked, man. This is too much money for all of. So the and Video Games Chronicle helpfully puts the prices for the other cards in here because I had forgotten. The regular 4080 is $1,200, and the 4090 is retailing for $1,600, assuming you could find one at that price. Because obviously the stock on those is super short, and so a lot of people are scalping them for, probably depending on the model. I bet they're probably still trying to get $1,000. I saw last time I was looking at these around the time that I got my 4090, I was looking like how much do they want for these things, and it was like there were some models that were like, it was like, here's $400 above list, and then other ones that were like, here's $1,200 above list, and you're like, you're scum. That's a lot of money. The thing fucking it up even further is like that $1,600 for a 4090 kind of sounds okay because of how fucked the 3090 situation was for a long time, and how scalpers were impacting that market so much, and just graphics cards over the last few years, like how jacked it's been. Like $1,600 for a 4090, you're like, oh, yeah, I could see that, considering that 3090s were $2,000 at a certain point. But yeah, this whole market is so fucked. That said, I bought a 4090 not that long ago, and from a gaming perspective, it has not been a huge leap over the 3090, but from a video encoding and from a workflow perspective, from me posting videos on the internet and rendering videos and ripping DVDs and and then rendering those videos as to down to proper sized MKVs and so on and so forth. It's been cool. It's been extremely cool. That said, if you're ripping DVDs or Blu-rays or something like that and you're doing it for quality, don't use your GPU to do it. Do a CPU encode. They look better. It's a better use of the space. Everything. Like when you compare the two. The hardware encoders are going to be great for live stream situations someday when Twitch supports X265 or maybe even AV1. Hopefully that day comes soon. I think that actually will be a big deal. But right now, that's not really an option. So anyway, ripping DVDs, haha, what is this, 2005? I mean, honestly, there are some movies that are hard to fucking find. And you're like, well, these aren't on any streaming service, so I've got to just, if I want to have this movie on here where I can watch it. I bought a fucking VHS tape, man. I have to rip a fucking VHS tape pretty soon here. My wife was looking for a movie, and I was like, this movie doesn't exist. Like, oh shit, it's on VHS. There was a sealed VHS copy of it on eBay for like $4. I'm like, well, shit, man, I'll get it. I got this retro tink. I'll hook it up to my VCR, and I'll do it that way. But I just haven't had time to do it yet. I got it all hooked up though, so I'm ready to rip VHS tapes, and I have some bangers. The first tape I put in was like an ECW pay-per-view I had recorded off TV. But I also have like a videotape that Capcom used in its lawsuit against Data East, or maybe it was a Data East tape refuting the Capcom lawsuit. When Capcom tried to sue Data East over Fighter's History, because they said Fighter's History was a Street Fighter 2 clone. It was a tape from that. Anyway. And there's a bunch of tapes in the garage. I'm just assuming they're all pornographic, but I don't actually know. But I've got boxes and boxes of tapes out there. Actually, honestly, most of it's probably Mystery Science Theater. So, yeah. The graphics card situation is fucked. And Tom's Hardware has an article from last week that says desktop GPU sales hit 20-year low. This is from, looks like this is data from Q3 of 2022. And this is data from something called John Petty Research. I get a lot of emails like this that are like, we did a little bit of data and we're going to send it to you so you write an article and link to us. But this seems like less shady than some of the ones that I get for sure. And of course, the implication here is that like now that Ethereum mining on GPUs is not really a thing anymore, and that the crypto demand for GPUs is kind of dried up, that obviously that's going to impact demand, which is good for people that play games, but also it's just, I don't know, something about it feels off at the same time. They go on to say here, the industry shipped around 6.9 million standalone graphics boards for desktop PCs, and a similar number of discrete GPUs for notebooks in the third quarter. Despite slowing demand for discrete graphics cards for desktops, unit sales were down 31.9% year over year. NVIDIA strengthened its position to an 86% market share. Again, this is according to Tom's Hardware, which I believe is recapping a research report. But then, yeah, a lot of the sales took a nosedive here, and Tom's is also backing that up, because you had people waiting. They knew that those 40 series cards were coming, and so they're like, well, I'm not going to buy a 30 series card because I'm going to wait for the new one. But you also had NVIDIA desperately trying to make more 30 series cards to meet demand, and then as they were able to start to meet demand, then the 40 series cards came out and no one wanted the old cards, and they didn't reduce the price on the old cards enough to make it enticing, and it's a fucking bad situation for them, I bet. But hey, that's life in the big city, baby. Joe Petty Research says that this decline is the most significant drop since the 2009 recession.
Yet, for those of us who have been following the discrete desktop GPU market for long enough, the situation seems even more dire. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. This is a weird one, and I wonder, NVIDIA targeting the top of the market like this, and like these cards are fucking killer. The 3090 was a great graphics card as well, but they're a bazillion dollars. And so when you have Intel entering the market and obviously AMD doing what AMD will do in a more affordable way, obviously you're not going to hit the same power level, like you're not going to get the same fucking teraflops or whatever you get out of these high-end NVIDIA cards, but like also who can fucking afford that shit? Like, I was able to justify it as a tax write-off and it's like, this is my job. This is what I do. So it was, it felt okay on that front to be like, well, if I get it in this calendar year, it's a tax write-off for this year, and that would be better than if it was a tax write-off for next year. And it was like I was able to logic my way into going, yeah, I'll get one. And even then it was like kind of like, if this doesn't happen, that's okay. But it did, and it's a cool card, but not $3,000 cool, not $2,000. The markup that people are putting on 4090s right now. I'll look. What the fuck is the NVIDIA like reference card, the Founders Edition card going for? Yes, Air Jordan 2. That's what I'm looking for. Electronics. Thanks, StockX. And they got a digital PlayStation 5 for $503. Jesus, flipper zeros? People trying to flipper zeros? Yeah, so the reference board, the NVIDIA Founders Edition 4090 is on StockX right now for $1,945. The last one that was sold went for $2,285. That's fucking crazy. Because that's, there's like fees and tax and other stuff on top of that. That's not an out the door price. So you for a graphics card that's on here for $1,945, you're probably paying what, $2,200 when all is said and done. Some of these other there's a fucking ROG. If you want to join the fucking Republic of fucking Gamers and get that ROG Strix 4090, that's $2,800 fucking dollars. Who the fuck is paying, and apparently someone sold one on here for $2,700. There's a chipmunk out my window. Hi, buddy. Hey. I'm crawling around. Okay, see you later. Sorry. That's... All right. Chipmunk's gone. That's stupid. So, like, of course, the notion that, like, hey, desktop GPU sales are not banging. Like, yeah, no shit. It's because a bunch of dick fucks bought up all the stock and they're trying to extort people for as much money as they can get. And now they're in for however much money they had to pay for them. And so they're like, well, we got to get back. And so those prices should be maybe coming down a little bit, I would think, but I don't know. They're fluctuating all over the place. Like the amount of money that those 4090s are going for, it's not something that's like normalizing and coming down and like, oh, eventually we're going to hit an availability, plateau here where you can just go buy them. It doesn't feel like it's on that path yet. It feels like very jagged, very all over the place. And, yeah, so again, not surprising that GPU sales would be hitting a low here. And this probably seems like, all of this NVIDIA stuff seems like good news for AMD. Right? Because people are going to go like, that's a stupid amount of money, even for this 4070. That is still more money than I want to spend on a GPU right now. What else is out there? And you've got these Intel cards and you've got these AMD cards, and they're obviously not as powerful, but they're significantly more affordable and also significantly more available. So I wonder how this ends up panning out. And then, back now take that and back that into, what does this mean for video game developers in terms of the their hardware targets for PC ports, and how are they, what are they looking to do? Does this lead to a situation where developers are like, yeah, I mean, we could, we could support DLSS 3, I guess, for the fucking 20 people that have these cards. Are there enough owners of the NVIDIA cards out there to make that make sense for them to even bother when it comes to building their PC ports? Obviously, they're going to be targeting console range for, baseline playability, They're still going to be like looking at PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X specs and going like, yeah, okay, this is what we're looking for. But I mean, in the grander scheme of things, when it comes to how, what are they going to support? Are they going to go all out and support all these weird fucking bells and whistles that NVIDIA has put into the newer cards? I don't know. I guess like some of that support often comes as part of a marketing deal anyway, right? Like NVIDIA shows up and goes like, let us put the frame, let us write the words "frames win games" inside of your intro logo, and then support DLSS 3, and we'll give you some co-marketing money or whatever it is. Well, I don't know. Sometimes it just feels like we're getting into this weird chicken and egg situation on GPUs, where we've got these features that sound enticing, the features on the newer cards, but like, I don't know. It's too early to tell, right? Is DLSS 3 going to matter? And like, sure, eventually it will. But all this stuff always gets a slow start. It's the same way with every generation of NVIDIA card, where there's always some new thing in there that like 4 games support it. And you're like, oh man, Metro looks awesome. Everything else looks good too, I guess. Frames win games, as they say. I'm still waiting for my monitor. Speaking of frames, that will support, I guess, was it 240 hertz? Sounds like that is going to ship on the 16th of this month. That is still 2 weeks away, friends. It's too long. I thought it was going to ship this week. They lied to me, but what are you going to do? Yeah, I don't know. PC hardware seemed like we talked a little bit about the quality of PC ports last week, and how it feels like we're getting into a really weird space right now, where like you have stuff like the Callisto protocol coming out and just kind of sucking in terms insofar as it's a PC port. I don't know. I'm not saying anything about the quality of the game, but just the performance. Especially performance with ray tracing turned on and everything there, like it just isn't capable. Again, this is, I'm speaking to you from a 5950X with a fucking 4090 in it, and if you turn everything on in Callisto Protocol, it runs like fucking trash. Like a skittery 50 frames a second. Skittery. Up and down. All over the place. Very not great. That shouldn't be the case. I'm speaking to you from the world where Gotham Knights came out and is just bad on, like performance wise. Also, I don't think that game's good. That one, I will say. Also, the game is bad. But, we just have more and more of these situations where PC versions of games are just getting a little funky, getting a little rough around the edges in a way that it didn't really seem like it was. Even Call of Duty, there were people with plenty of complaints about the PC version of Call of Duty. That's a case where I had some trouble the first 3 days, and then after that, it really was pretty much fine. And that those glitches are more across platform, like money duping glitches and weird shit like that. That I don't know. I'm still fucking playing like 2 hours of that game every night. I'm getting gold camos. I'm getting long shots. I'm getting, like I am playing quite a lot of Call of Duty. I am continuing to have a really awesome time with that game. Just a fun video game. So it's fun to, like I said, I'm having a fantastic time with it. And then you see all of these people that are like all fucking pro esports, whatever. See a lot of them on TikTok. My For You page on TikTok is full of all kinds of fucking trash about this stuff. And there's people going like, there's the skill gap and I can't, there's like, I'm getting owned by people with bad guns. It's like, good. That means there are no bad guns, is what that means. That means that, like, yeah, no, it should be, yeah. But I'm a streamer. Like, yeah, the reality show I'm a Streamer, get me out of here. Warzone 2 edition. Those people suck. It's yeah, and I think that game has been a fantastic time. It's been so much fun. And yeah. Anyway, like how dare they not cater the entire game to these people's tastes, so that these people can get in there and tear it up against the normie, the little Timmies or whatever the fuck they call them. It's just fucking tragic. Fuck these people. That's it for news. I'm gonna do one last little sweep here and see if anything happened over the last couple hours other than Twitch breaking, and I think it sounds like Twitch is back. It sounds like Twitch is working again. Nope, not really seeing much. It's in some places this is everyone's first day back at work, which is weird to go back to work on Tuesday, but then it's because because New Year's Day was on a Sunday, or we'll give you the Monday off, or or whatever. Square put out its like Happy New Year letter and talked about like how it's actually great that the NFTs and the blockchain and crypto has been taking a fucking bath, because it creates a good opportunity for us, and we're very big on doing this shit. Like reiterating that they're fucking idiots. Yeah, whatever. And Konami mentioned that it has unannounced projects in the works. That's from Video Games Chronicle, looking at the New Year's greeting that Konami published on Famitsu, that they said that they have projects deeply and quietly underway. Video Games Chronicle then kind of ties that to like, well, maybe this is from that old Nvidia leak. There are still some unannounced games on there, including a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3. Who knows? But that Silent Hill announcement seemed to kind of confirm more of those leaks, and at this point, that stuff should just be taken as like, that was factual at one point in time. Maybe some of those games got canceled or whatever, but like that stuff was real, because enough of it got announced and made real to where, yeah, that's happening. How about we get into some emails? As I load up the old email client here, we've got a lot of them. Let's see. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send in your emails to me, and I'll take a look at them. John got in touch and said, do you think the next Nintendo console will have backwards compatibility? John's from Middle Tennessee. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say that, like, my general feeling at this stage is that is a baseline expectation, and that unless you've got a damn good reason as to why you can't do it, it is now a must. Now, the catch with Nintendo is, of course, that locks them to that architecture unless they want to do a bunch of actual work to emulate the Tegra architecture on whatever platform they move to next. But I don't know enough about that to speak one way or the other on that. But now that we're in an era where, seemingly the majority of sales are coming digitally, I think that then ratchets up the expectation, including that, now we have seen decent to good backwards compatibility on PlayStation and Xbox. At least insofar as, like, yes, like the overwhelming majority of PlayStation 4 games run the same deal with the Xbox One games on Xbox Series X. Like that is the expectation, is that stuff works. And then with Xbox, obviously they go back even further in more limited forms. Same with the PlayStation, but they've locked that to their tiers of PlayStation Plus and all that service stuff. I guess you could buy those games individually if you so choose, but generally it is presented as part of their PSN service. And so my general feeling is that that's an expectation, and that if they break that, like, if you're at a point where you're like, hey, I've got to keep a Switch around, an original Switch, so that I can play these games, because everything that came, like, I just don't think that flies anymore. I just don't think that fucking works. I would, I think that would, catastrophic is not the word, but I think that would be an incredibly bad thing for them to do. Jonathan goes on, if yes, do you see Nintendo and third-party developers releasing patches for their Switch games to add frame rate and graphical improvements, like how PlayStation 4 games got Pro and PS5 upgrade patches? No. I don't. I guess I should update. Sure, in very limited cases, yeah, I could see a handful of individual games being patched to run better on a new platform. But I think those would be like recent releases. So let's say, well, we were talking last week that we think the new Switch will come out like 2025. So maybe the games that come out in 2024 get those upgrades, or maybe we go all the way back to the more, maybe they do an upgrade patch for this new Zelda that's coming out this year, right? Maybe that's the thing. But like, remember that Nintendo, and this is, if you want to come up with a good reason why Nintendo would not have backwards compatibility on their next platform, it's because they've gotten quite good at reselling you the same game over and over again. And I'm sure they like that. But yeah, that's not great. So I don't know. I could see that in limited cases where they, hey, we're going to patch this game to run better on new hardware. But I think it's not something where they go like, oh, remember when Bayonetta 3 came out and it didn't run good? Or remember when that Pokemon game came out? We're going to update those, because those games will be years old and totally forgotten by then. And I don't have, I'm going to say I don't necessarily have faith in Nintendo to have any kind of automated solution that is like, hey, we've got an emulation layer, or we've got a layer here in place that will automatically smooth out some of those frame rate problems. We've purchased Yuzu. No, I don't see that happening in a widespread way. So in limited fashion, maybe you see some devs address their individual games, but I don't really see them doing that. I just don't think they would view that as worth their time. Robbie from Akron writes in and says, people constantly look down on the GameCube and deem it a failure, despite having amazing first-party titles and being of similar power to the Xbox and PS2. I don't think that I would call the GameCube a failure. It has a handle. It comes in Spice Orange. Most of the games are bad, but it comes in Spice Orange. And then goes on to say, what made it the loser of that generation? Was the biggest issue for the success of the GameCube that it lacked a DVD player? Sure. Yeah. That one of the big things that pushed PlayStation 2 early on was that it could also serve as your DVD player. And I'm sure that a number of people used their PS2 as a DVD player for a good long time. The original Xbox, obviously, as well. You could purchase that add-on with the remote control, and that's how they let you do that, because it couldn't do it out of the box. That probably matters, but if the GameCube could play DVDs, if the Panasonic Q came out in the States, oh man, if only. I don't think that would have like equaled another 5 million sales or whatever. Because I think also by the time the GameCube came out, because remember the PlayStation 2 came out ahead of those other two platforms, and then the GameCube and Xbox came out like a week apart, I think, in the US. DVD players had become a little cheaper by then, and like obviously the PlayStation 2 had been around for quite some time and had been a very effective DVD player as well, and so the market or the desire or the need for a DVD playing console had changed a little bit by that time. Not all the way, but a little bit. I think these are harsh words across the board, right? But I think if we had to call one of these three platforms a failure, we would talk about the original Xbox as being a failure. Microsoft ditched the generation and rushed out the 360. A wise move in retrospect. Like, it worked out very well for them. The Xbox 360 was an amazing fucking platform, and they did some very smart shit. But like the original Xbox, they did not have the first party support to really light the world on fire. Obviously, people loved Halo and Brute Force and Blood Wake and, the hits, right? I have a fondness for the first party Xbox stuff on the original Xbox, but like it's fucking crazy. It's all a bunch of weird shit. And that's cool, but it didn't translate into, millions and millions of software sales and everything. So I would look at that and go like, the Xbox is technically the most powerful of the three consoles of that generation, but also they just didn't have the software to back it up. And so Microsoft cut and run. If that's not a failure, then what is it, right? So, the GameCube, I think the problem with the GameCube is that it, they had some good first party games on the GameCube. They were not all bangers. And the third party support was a little weird, but you were still getting like, that was still decent third party support where like, hey, BMX XXX came out on all three consoles. So that's the level of third party support that we were seeing then. It wasn't it wasn't quite as cut off as nowadays. I think Nintendo's third party support is way worse than it was then. But we were starting to see like the third party support for Nintendo platforms really start to fall apart. It's a strong word, but it wasn't banging like it used to. It wasn't like the fucking SNES, right? Everyone had to be there. And then the N64 came out and you were like, and by you, I mean game developers were like, our games are going to be on CD and we're not going to put them on these hyper expensive fucking cartridges. Square bailed. Final Fantasy VII became a PlayStation game. The game changed around all that shit. And so the third-party support for the N64 got weird because people were like, we got to support this fucking weird controller. We got to ship on cartridge. It's a fucking blurry mess. And the third-party developers that focused on it did extremely well. Like, I'm sure, like, South Park, which we were playing a couple weeks ago, but like Turok, people fucking loved Turok on the N64. People were excited about South Park back then also. That was, whatever. So there was a decent amount of third-party stuff there. But then I feel like from the N64 and carrying on forward, the magic was kind of gone in terms of like, hey, we've got to be on Nintendo platforms because the PlayStation had become so dominant. That it became like, oh, well, obviously we're going to be on PlayStation 2. It's the fucking PlayStation 2. And so that became a big deal. You had developers that didn't want to cram their games onto the smaller GameCube discs and do all that custom fucking weird shit. And, there were a lot of situations around that time. But then, Nintendo quietly kind of stepped out of the power race after that. And then the Wii came out, and all of your the idea that we were going to port games to all these platforms suddenly wasn't really a good option anymore because the Wii couldn't handle it increasingly. And also that the opportunity on the Wii was different, because with the motion controller and the popularity of motion controlled games like Wii Sports, you would have developers go like, well, we should make something custom for the Wii that takes advantage of this. And so you had them try to do that, and then those games would come out and no one would fucking buy them. And so the developers would go like, all right, I think we're done here. And then when the Wii U came out, they didn't come back. Or they came back at launch because they're like, well, we should be there at launch just in case. And they're like, nope, we're good. I remember hearing, not long after launch of the Wii U, I remember hearing from someone at EA, they said like, oh yeah, we sent most of our Wii U dev kits back because we're done. You know, there's still FIFA or, you know, like whatever else, you know, contractually that we have to do, but like, it's a wrap, you know? And so third parties were just not that excited about the Wii U because they had taken a bath on, you know, like the Wii, third party sales on the Wii were not usually awesome. You'd have anomalies, right? What was it? The 2K game, the Game Party. Was that it? Like, and then that led to like a bunch of other games with party in the name because they're like, well, we can capitalize on this. And so like all the weird Wii shovelware, trying to sell mini game collections to people that liked Wii Sports, which was a mini game collection, but a fucking damn good one. The Wii and Wii U were a fucking mess for third parties. And so now we get to the Switch and they're like, oh, the Switch is exciting again. It's a little more standard, but it's also kind of a generation behind. And so, you know, you have teams out there doing amazing work, getting fucking, I don't know, like what Overwatch and Apex and, you know, Doom Eternal, or, you know, just Doom running on a Switch. But did those games sell? Did people line up to buy Doom on the Switch? No. And so if people are only going to play Nintendo console, or people are only going to really play Nintendo games on Nintendo consoles, then third parties at some point are going to go like, oh, look, okay, if we can do an easy, cheap port to this platform, then of course we'll do it. But, and now that the PlayStation 5 and this other stuff is out, like the gap between the kind of lead SKU of your game and the Switch SKU of your game is even greater. And you're like, well, now it's even more work to make this game a reality on this platform. Like, why fucking do it? And there's no guarantee that people even want it on this platform. So, you know, we're just not going to do it. And it becomes very easy to skip Nintendo. And it's a shame in a way, but, you know, but I get it. And we'll see what the next, you know, but if Nintendo is going to make a concerted effort and make a very deliberate effort to step out of the arms race and just be like, we're not gonna fucking play this ray tracing fucking here's the teraflops, like, you know, like we're just not gonna do that. We're gonna make a fun platform for the whole family, and it'll run Mario great at launch, and then 3 years later you'll be like, man, this thing's kind of fucked up. Then third parties are gonna deal with that all over again. And I think that whatever Nintendo ends up doing next, it will probably be in that vein. You'll be like, it's great. This is way more powerful than a Switch. You're like, cool, man. Is it like a PlayStation 5? Like, no, not really. It's closer to one though. So for that window there where that matches up, we can get ports and get more third party stuff. And so you end up in a situation where like the best games on Switch or the games that make the most sense on Switch, it's Nintendo's first party stuff and cool indie games. I bet fucking I bet Hades did gangbusters on the Switch. That seems like a game that would do really well there. You know, it seems like there's just a tier of indie game, and we're seeing some of this on the Steam Deck in some ways, but like there's just there's a level of indie game that, like, you know, hey, these are deep, rich games that don't necessarily need all the hardware power in the world to run well, and so they're perfect fucking fits for the Switch. They're great supplemental material as you wait, you know, as you're between first party games. You can play that stuff and have an amazing time with the Switch. It's a very solid platform for like kind of those two things. but like, somewhere in a bunker, Ubisoft is thinking about what the next, man, this is a dark, somewhere Ubisoft is sitting there going like, what's the next Far Cry going to be? Oh God. And they're not going, and we're going to put it on the Switch, like maybe by the time it comes out, there'll be a new Nintendo platform and maybe they'll go like, oh yeah, we'll put that out. We'll put it out on that because we like to be there at launch. Zombie U2. Let's go. Get Bono on the horn. But it's just, it just, that stuff just doesn't matter on Nintendo platforms that way. And that's just the way it is. Chase from Cleveland writes in and asks, do you think that Microsoft will fix the old Call of Duty games and bring them to Game Pass? I would love to easily be able to play those games without worrying about jacked lobbies. I would hope so. So if you're not aware of this, we did talk about this a little bit last week, but older Call of Duty games, 360 era Call of Duty games, a lot of those games are hacked all to hell. And so when you go grab an old Black Ops game, which some of those games are on Game Pass, or Modern Warfare 2 or whatever, that like when you get on, you are connecting to some weird modded Xbox, running some weird modded lobby that is running some fake zombies mode or some weird, there's all kinds of weird stuff happening in those old Call of Duty games on Xbox 360 and sometimes on PlayStation 3, because I guess there are ways to get modded PlayStation 3s online as well. I don't know. I guess I don't know what I would want to have happen here. It would be nice to be able to go back and play those games the way they were originally designed and be able to have a good cheat-free experience and enjoy them. But also, if those players are having fun doing that weird shit, I don't want to take it away from them. That's cool. If they want to do that weird shit, that's cool. I did go ahead and install the weird custom server stuff that works for Call of Duty Ghosts, Advanced Warfare, and Modern Warfare 2 on PC. And we talked a little bit about Advanced Warfare last week, but I went ahead and played some Ghosts, and I played some Modern Warfare 2, the 2009 Modern Warfare 2. And it's weird, man. When you go back to Modern Warfare 2 now, and Ghosts also, but like, they come off like free to play. Okay, they come off like low budget PlayStation 3 PSN games, if you know what I mean. There was an era on PSN where there's like, what is it, like Heavy Fire Afghanistan, or there was just a bunch of fucking weird, shitty first person shooters that had multiplayer with no one playing them, and they would come out and they'd be $10 and they just would exist, and you're like, fucking, well, all right, whatever. And they would vanish and you would never think about them again. Those old Call of Duty games just feel kind of like those to me now. Like if you look at the running animation in Modern Warfare 2 and how fast the reload animation is compared to current Call of Duty, just like the everything seems very lightweight and fake by comparison. The animation, the quality of the newer games, and the, I guess, like reality of them, whatever, those older games feel crazy. Because you just tap the run and it just starts chugging, the running animation, chug. And the whole thing just feels really crazy. But it was still fun. It was interesting to go back to them. But what it made me want was some of those maps in the current Call of Duty. But also there were maps that I'm pretty sure I'd never seen before in Ghosts, because I joined a server that had all the DLC maps and stuff, and there was the weird, it was like a gold mine. I think it was called Gold Rush. It was like a gold mine, so there was a mine cart going around that would run players over, and there were elevators and all this other weird shit. And And also that game had a Snoop Dogg announcer pack, if you remember, that I was able to turn on. And you could call in a guard dog in that game as one of your kill streaks. And so Snoop Dogg would be very excited every time you called in a guard dog. It's very strange going back to Ghosts in particular, because it's just the way the create a class stuff worked in that game was so annoying. And anyway, some of those games are on Game Pass now and they're not fixed. So I would not expect Microsoft to do a ton of work to fix the old 360 games. If they did this, but if they ever wanted to present it and try to make a big deal about it and say, look, all of these Call of Duty games are on Game Pass now, then I think it would behoove them to clean them up, I guess. Because otherwise, like, what are you doing? Yeah. Richard writes in from Holland. We talked about last week what the future of first-person shooting is. And, in a world where battle royales have now been around for years, and they're not quite old hat. They're still very popular. Fortnite is still like one of the 10 most streamed games on Twitch. And I'm sure their player base is fine. And, Apex is still there. Warzone 2 seems to be doing just fine. People still want to play those games. But like, what else is there? And that's why we got to talking about Fortnite and how every season Fortnite is like, fuck it, now there's BMX bikes and a big hammer, and they're trying to change things up and offer new experiences within the confines of what you think of as Fortnite. And so Richard wrote in something that's a little long. I believe the future is called the extraction looter shooter, which really rolls off the tongue, which it might blow up the same way Battle Royales did and maybe die as quickly as well at some point. While Battle Royale shooters are way more fun for the experienced and hardcore player, the extraction shooter caters to both casual and hardcore players, since it is cooperative and, if you wish, competitive. These games are PvPvE, so you could choose to go in a group or solo, loot and kill some AI enemies and get out of the map with your newfound stuff, adding to your progress. Or you could risk it all and kill high-level AI or players to get all the glory or nothing. So very flexible and often very watchable for streaming communities, which I guess nowadays is a selling point. Several of these games are in development right now, and even Call of Duty tried their hand at it with DMZ, which seriously lacked features to really become popular. Some say the new Last of Us Factions game will be such a game, and rumors suggest even Bungie is now developing something along those lines. What do you think of these types of games, and do you think they will have a chance of blowing up big time? Sure. I think that there's... I feel like... I don't know that I agree with some of the stuff you're saying in here, Richard, because DMZ seems like it is quite popular. I don't think it'll maintain its level of popularity without adding more stuff. They need to keep iterating on it quickly, I think, to kind of maintain that, because you're gonna have people that chew through the missions and all that, and not have anything of value to extract from the zone, right? Like, what are you getting out of it if you already went and got the chemist's gun? What are you getting out of it if you already did the Building 21 stuff? Which they added that, so that's like a new thing they just added relatively recently. But is it gone now? Is Building 21 gone? I forget. And by I forget, I mean I have not played much DMZ lately, and have never been very seriously about it. But yeah, it's El Generico on the Discord says that Tarkov grognards don't like DMZ, but it seems pretty popular. That is my impression as well. Is that people that are playing Tarkov are a special breed of fucking crazy, and they're gonna look down their nose at anything that is even slightly more mainstream or palatable. But there is room for something like that. What was that? There was the The Extraction, it's not Remnant. What the fuck is the name of the game? I forget what it is. Hunt Showdown. Yes, that is exactly what I'm thinking of. Hunt Showdown. Where you had, the idea of like, oh, it's kind of a battle royale thing, but there is an extraction element. You do kind of want to get a thing and get out. And obviously the Dark Zone in The Division has elements of this as well, but not, not necessarily to the extent that this does. But yeah, I think we will see more iteration on that front, right? I think DMZ is proving popular enough. I think Hunt Showdown was one of those games that will be, influential in a sense, where people probably played that one, and Tarkov as well. They played some of that stuff and went like, there's something here. We could do something here that might actually attract millions of players if we do it right. Because it creates stakes. And that's something that's lacking from shooters. We did talk about a bit about this. I won't go through it all, but like, you have to be very careful when you put stakes in your game, because if players lose too much, it might be too harsh for them and they will quit. I think that's what you run into with something like Tarkov, is that the stakes are high. Also, that game is like, has too many bumps on it. It is too clunky in too many different ways, to where you feel like you run into situations where you're like, I just lost a bunch of shit and I'm not even sure what I lost or if it matters. Like every time I've played Tarkov, it's been like that. It's been like, I know that this means something, but I don't know what. And am I fucked now? Do I not have anything? Like what happened here? And so they don't have enough of an onboarding process to really, or they didn't. It's been a while since I played. To make you feel like you know what you're doing before you're putting it all on the line. And so they probably need something like that, where like, hey, we're going to give you a good ramp to figure out how to play this game, how to shoot well, how to do all this other stuff. And then you can start putting things on the line. Call of Duty gets around that because it just plays like Warzone and it just plays like Call of Duty, So you've already played a bunch of that. So DMZ can kind of cut that corner. And The Division was able to do that to a certain extent as well. But I don't know. I think we'll see more of these games, of course, but I don't know that I would necessarily say that like this is definitely the future of competitive shooting. I don't know. Like I agree with you that it is very watchable. Like seeing clips from seeing clips of people getting fucked over in DMZ is really fun. Seeing clips of people being weird with proximity chat in DMZ or even in Warzone is a lot of fun as well. But is it going to be something that is watched by millions? Is it something that like they're going to build an esports franchise around? Like I guess maybe if you have the right game, maybe you could pull that off. But I don't know. That seems like a little hard to pull off to me. But we'll see. The actual answer is we will see. Courtney writes in and says, working in business, there are times when we have to realize a feature to capitalize on it and avoid taking the OpEx hit. Do games ever release only for a company's internal funding and operating models? Cases where they know it's broken, but they also know they can't capitalize on the cost without putting out a product? Absolutely. Yes. That is why, yes, that is why games will, and this happens a little bit less now, but this is why the end of March would bunch up with a bunch of big releases in the last 2 weeks of March, because you would have a lot of companies that go like, we need to ship this game during this fiscal year. It has to fucking happen because we have to ship it as part of this fiscal. Otherwise, God damn it, we are fucked. And yes, so yes, that has happened. I'm sure that continues to happen in some cases, but the end of March doesn't feel quite as bunched up as it seems. Yes, so yes, there's Leaf Hopper on Twitch says Square Enix released 4 games in March of 22 before March 18th. So yeah, Square bunched them up there, but that's yeah, you'll definitely see some games coming in hot around March because they're just like, fuck this, we got to get it out the door. Matt from Midland, Ontario writes in and says, I recently had the opportunity to acquire a Street Fighter II Champion Edition Rainbow bootleg arcade cabinet. The cabinet is a Dynamo HS5 and everything except a few buttons are functioning. Replacement buttons and new Suzo Hap joysticks are already ordered, but I want to take things to the next level and remove the PCB and install a Mr.Cade. Have you ever considered installing your Mister into your Street Fighter II cabinet? I can tell this is going to turn into a real money pit, yet a fun hobby for me. So yeah, if we've talked about the Mister, of course. It's an FPGA based solution, open source device with a bunch of add-ons that you can bolt onto it to do a bunch of different shit, like like have USB ports, for example, or have analog video out. And one of these is the Mr.Cade, which I believe is sold at MrAddons.com. There's a few different ways to kind of do this, but basically it's a harness. It's a way to wire up your Mister inside of a JAMA cabinet and use it to play your Mister inside of an arcade cabinet. That doesn't necessarily appeal to me that much. I don't know that I need that. It's cool that you can do it. But it's not, I think if I ever went out and got a candy cab, if I went out and got like an egret or a Vulix even, just like something more modern, but if I ever went out and bought like a candy cab, I would consider putting a Mister in that. I think that would be cool, but no, no, I don't. I'm fine playing the Mister in front of the television. That said, I do own two Misters, and the other one that does have analog video out is not getting a ton of use right now. So sure, why not? But my Street Fighter cabinet is not even accessible right now. And last time I turned it on, the board that was in there was not working properly. It's a CPS2 multi-boot, like a multi thing, and it would turn on and just be a red screen. So a lot of tapping on chips and everything there when I got all that. That was before I moved that I got that stuff. So maybe after the move, it all magically works. Who knows? But yeah, not really. Yeah, not really jonesing for it. I do think it's cool that you can do that. Danny from Colchester in the UK just writes in and says, just landed in the UK from Spain and saw a guy wearing a shirt that just said big dudes on it. Thought you should know. Cool, man. Thanks. You should get some, let's get some big dudes t-shirts. Joe from St. Louis writes in and says, what is your go-to Chinese order when you first try out a new place? It's probably chicken fried rice and Mongolian beef. I feel like those are kind of the standards. Like I want to know about those two dishes, and I will judge the rest of it based on that. But also, if I see a curry chicken on the menu, I might I want to know about that, because I feel like I am perpetually looking for a great curry chicken, especially now that I'm not working in San Francisco near Henry's Hunan. When in San Francisco, go to Henry's Hunan and get yourself the curry chicken. Get yourself a meat pie. Oh, man. Get yourself a meat pie. Okay, let's see. Ryan from Phoenix writes and says, I heard you talk about your Fairchild at Channel F and going to arcades as a kid, but do you remember when video games clicked for you? The moment when you felt the bug or the love for the medium? For me, it was beating Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, and 3 when I was 3. No, it was just always there. I don't know. Like there was, I don't know that there was a time that I was like, yes, now I do like video games. I'm sure that time did exist, but like there was never a question. It was just like, oh, video games, these are fantastic. And that's all I want to do from now on. Also, did you really beat Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, and 3 when you were 3 years old? And, certainly possible, but no, when I got into video games were still relatively new, at least as a commercial product. I mean, obviously they had existed since since before I was born. But in terms of like, hey, you can buy a console and bring it home and put cartridges in it, and you can go to arcades and play Pac-Man. Pac-Man was very big. There was almost a fever around it, really. And so I played a lot of Pac-Man at home on an Atari computer. I played way less in arcades because when Pac-Man was big, there was a gigantic line at the arcade of people waiting to play Pac-Man. And I was not interested in waiting in that line to play Pac-Man. But I don't know. Like I don't have an exact moment where I was like, video games, I love those. It was just inherent to I think just being a kid. Well, I guess maybe it wasn't. I was gonna say it's inherent to being a kid in that era, but a lot of the kids I went to school with did not play games, and it was not something that was widely accepted. Certainly the way it is now. It was definitely something that was like some fucking nerd shit. It was definitely like not fucking, it sure ain't going out and playing fucking football or whatever. So I don't know. Like I had friends who had computers, but it felt like we were few and far between. There was like a handful of other people that I knew that had computers and liked playing video games, but it was not something that was like, hey, or if it was people like, oh yeah, I've played a video game before. It wasn't, but to me it was everything. It was the like, okay, this is the thing I'm into. This is it. We found it. And I don't really remember when exactly that became the case, but it was probably sometime after I, the Fairchild Channel F did not necessarily do it, though I did play quite a bit of bowling on that, and the math game that came with it or that we got. But I didn't have a 2600 until years later. I had an Atari 400, which was more powerful and was a great home computer, and upgraded that to an 800 and played a ton of games there. That's where I played most of my Pac-Man. Quite a bit of Pooyan, and quite a lot of Lode Runner. But yeah, it's probably somewhere in that window, 1983, 1984, which is ironically kind of post-crash, that I played a ton of computer games and played a fuck ton of computer games. And even before that was going to arcades, and, Gauntlet came out, and, there was just I don't know, there was always something new to go see. And so it wasn't really about one moment. It was about just like, all of this shit is cool and there's always new shit. And that always felt cool. Here's a little question from chat here. Are you particularly glad that that's the time you got into games? I guess I don't know. I don't know it any other way. And so I am, in a sense, I kind of got in it near the beginning, not at the beginning. I didn't see a Pong arcade machine in the 70s. I saw it in the 80s. So, because I was a baby, or I was not born yet. But yeah, I don't know. I knew which. There were like 3 or 4 different arcades near me. 4. Let's call it 4 arcades in my immediate vicinity, and I had a pretty good idea of which arcade had which games, and so I would try to convince my dad would say, let's go, sure, let's go to the arcade. And he would, usually want to go to the one that was close by. And I'd be like, hey, we went there for the last 2 weekends. Why don't we go up to the mall in Santa Rosa and go to that one? Because they've got a kung fu machine and they've got a mousetrap machine or we'll go to the one in Katati because they've got a red alert machine and they've got this other, all that shit. And so I had that stuff pretty well clocked. But yeah. Let's see here. Dylan from Ohio writes in and says, recently some friends and I decided to buy an Unreal Tournament game on Steam. We quickly learned that playing online wasn't super easy compared to modern games, and after about an hour and a half of trying to follow online tutorials, we all refunded the game. I wonder if this is common. People buy games like this on Steam and realize the experience isn't quite as pick up and play as modern games and refund it. Maybe that plays into why they're taking it off sale if they are receiving a lot of refunds. Just a thought. The friend group ended up playing Proteus on Game Pass instead, and it was pretty fun. That probably is a factor. Yeah, I mean, if any, but there's probably not a lot of new sales coming to those games anyway. But yeah, that is potentially a factor, because on those games you need to run your own server or you need to connect to someone else's server. And the thing I would say is that there are probably people running servers for all of those games right now. Like even though Unreal Tournament 3 is not currently on Steam, I still have it installed, and I was able to find a couple of humans playing it. And a bunch of empty servers still up and running. So there were still ways for you to just kind of click in and go. You wouldn't experience a full server. You wouldn't experience this and that. There are bots, but that's not the same thing. And that is probably on the list of reasons why they would do this. But it probably has more to do with keeping the master servers running and the number of humans actually doing it and all of that as well. So I'm sure it's a multifaceted thing. Let's see. Ben in Boston writes in and says, I recently realized that I've largely stopped actually buying games. Between Game Pass, PlayStation Plus Extra, Epic's free games, and various other giveaways and bits and bobs, I very rarely feel the need to shell out full price for something to play. Do you see this as a broad trend? And if so, what does it say about the future? We'll see. I think that is something that will, you're still going to have those big moments, those big, it's release day for this game and it went on to sell. You still have like a game like Pokemon selling millions of copies in its opening weekend and doing gangbusters despite its performance problems. But you could see a situation where you've got the games that reach that tier, and those are the games that go on sale for full price, and then you've got everything else, which people will go like, oh, I'll wait for it to show up on Game Pass, or I'll wait for it to show up here. And that could be a situation. I think there are a number of people that we look at Game Pass and go like, at some point the switch flips somewhere, some teeter will totter, and this will end up being, a maybe a problem for certain types of games or a problem for certain small developers or what have you. And Microsoft is very quick to say, no, it's doing great. And there are plenty of developers out there that will also say, hey, when we went on Game Pass, it led to increased sales in our game and it helped expose our game to more people. It's like the problem that a lot of devs are running into is that there are so many games coming out all the time that, like, how do you break through the noise and get people to even know that your game exists, let alone buy it? There are tons of games in that category, and that problem is only getting worse. The console storefronts from PSN and the Xbox Store, are terrible. Steam is increasingly moving in a direction where they show you games like the games you've been playing. I don't know how that works out for people because the games I've been playing are weird because I'm trying out I get served a fair amount of porn games on Steam in the recommendation queue because I played Hentai Survivors for half an hour a while back or because I looked at these pages or whatever it is. Discoverability is a disaster across the board and something's got to change on that front. But I don't know what. And so you look at that and you think like, well, is that a problem or do developers just need to get better? Is it a get good situation? Like, hey, if you want your game to do better, like make a better game. Find a better way to market it. Find a better way to get in touch with people. And it's not our problem as the storefront. I don't know. You have people gaming the eShop by putting their games on deep discounts with fake real prices to rise to the top of some artificial chart and doing that. There's all sorts of weird shit like that. And there's like tips and tricks that indie developers swap around. They really want you to wishlist their game on Steam because that usually backs into some kind of algorithm that helps their game get promoted more. And so you'll see a ton of developers go, please wishlist our game on Steam. It really helps us. And that's weird that's become such a big deal. But I don't know what the right way to go about it is, right? How do you cut through that noise? Because I think that, there used to be a real cream rises to the top sort of situation in games where, and this is something I feel like I played some amount of role in at a time, but now maybe not so much. When you hear about in talking to people that work with indie devs and like what leads to big increased sales for indie games, reviews on press websites are not on the list. That type of exposure, my understanding is that did not necessarily lead to sales compared to like, we got a big streamer to play it. We paid a big streamer to play it. And that led to something, but we had to pay a bunch of money to do it. And that, like the exposure piece is really weird now. And I think it's only getting weirder. And so I don't know. I don't know the actual answer to that question of like, hey, how do you find a way through the noise? Like I have a Steam curator page. If you wish to follow it, it is out there. It is what I think it's just my name. I forget what the fuck it's called. And when you run that, you actually get to see the number of views your like reviews have driven to store pages on Steam. And there were a couple of those that actually broke through in a way. It was like, oh, like this positive review I wrote of this thing led to like 1,000 people going off to this page, which is more than most of the other ones. But like even that's like not, so I don't think the Steam curator stuff is getting it. Maybe the bigger pages are, but like I don't get the impression that people really care about the Steam curation stuff all that much. I think it's a neat idea. But like that is the perpetual question is like indie developers wondering how the fuck do I get people to pay attention to my game? And it's all these, there's no like magic bullet. There's no like, you need to do this. It's a lot of little block and tackle stuff like, oh, well, you should make small, easily shareable video. It's the same fucking shit that like is actually probably the shit that I'm not doing for this podcast, right? It is like, oh, short shareable clips that you can post to social media. It's this, it's that, it's get in front of this people. It's be consistent with posting this and make sure you're hitting here. And all of that stuff is fucked right now. And it's been fucked for a while because people used to think like, oh, well, if I've got X number of followers on Twitter and I'm going to post this and it's going to do this. But those numbers, those engagement numbers, and now they're public, or somewhat public, not the clicks and the click-through rate. You can see that on your own tweets, I guess. But for years, hearing from game developers and also witnessing it myself in terms of like posting a link to content and seeing how many people actually follow through and click on it is just a fraction of a fraction, and it's shrinking all the time. And especially as Twitter becomes fucking even weirder, like those numbers went down even further lately. Like the click-through rate on Twitter sucks shit. And so it used to be like, oh, well, as a game developer, we've got to get out here and do this. And now you see game devs starting TikTok accounts. Hello. We're still on TikTok. All 18 of you watching here. Hello. So all of that stuff still exists and was thought of as like, well, this is the thing you have to do and get on Twitter and do this. And, I've got 100,000 followers. Well, of course. It's why the professional wrestler / well, I guess I don't know, when was the last time? I guess we'll still call him a professional wrestler. I don't know when the last time he actually wrestled was, but Ryback, the big guy, is constantly on Twitter complaining about like, I've been shadow banned. The rates on my tweet compared to how many people clicked on it, I am being unfairly singled out. I am being targeted. This needs to be fixed. We've got to get to the bottom of this. I'm Ryback. Feed me more engagement. It's hilarious because he's a fucking moron, because that's everything on Twitter. That's not you being shadow banned. That's Twitter is a shitty place to generate that type of engagement now, and has been for a number of years. And so what do you do instead? If you've got to get your stuff in front of people, what do you do instead? There's no easy answer, because the easy answer becomes like, well, I guess you've just got to do all of it and it'll all add up to something eventually. And maybe if you're lucky, something will break through and that'll, maybe translate into a bunch of sales for your game. But, It's been really rotten out there for that sort of thing. And yeah, so I don't know what the solution is. But you're right. Yes, I think there are a lot of people that are enjoying games on subscription services, and Microsoft is very quick to say that business works out really well for the developer. And again, I've talked to developers who back that up and say, yes, absolutely, Game Pass has been awesome for us. It was this big influx of money. It's been great. It's been great. And then some other devs that are a little not quite as sunshiny about it, but also not necessarily like, it's the worst thing in the world, it's destroying us. So I don't know. But I think everyone is a little creeped out, like, this doesn't feel right. Is this the future? I mean, look at Netflix, right? Netflix was funding a bunch of adventurous, weird shit right up until they weren't. Right up until the money said, no, don't do this. And so, does something like that happen to Game Pass in such a way where they can suddenly go like, oh, the type of game that does well on Game Pass is this type of game, and we're not going to sign Game Pass deals for any other type of game anymore, because we know now that doesn't work. And so if you're not making that type of game, you should start to make that type of game. I don't know. We'll see, I think, is the actual answer there. Avery in the Carolinas writes in and says, I found myself in the Library of Congress this week on vacation with my fiance, and we walked through their exhibit on photographs they have officially cataloged. Amongst photos like the first known portrait of Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt hunting, and other historically significant photographs was the attached. This is a massive photo of the Xbox 360's 0-hour aircraft hangar launch. It's a weird one to put. Yeah, we got this. It's the first ever picture of Lincoln, and here's the Xbox 360 aircraft hangar thing. And then Avery wants to know, what are the odds you are one of the blurry people in this photo? 0, because I was not at 0 hour. Also, along with this picture, what other moments photographed from gaming history do you think belong in a museum such as this? No, I did not go to 0 hour because I was too busy back in the office reviewing Xbox 360 games. We already had Xbox 360s for a while at that point. We sent a video team down there to cover it. And it sounded fascinating. It sounded like kind of a mess. But other photos throughout video game history. If we expand it to photos that I don't think actually exist or just like nonsense photos that maybe do exist, but I can't remember if this photo exists or not, or if it was just something I saw with my own eyes. Kojima coming out of a porta potty at the Sony party at E3. That's a classic. Yeah, if you expand it to screenshots, do you put wall guy in there? Like, what are the infamous screenshots throughout history? You know, do you have like, I would think you would have like the early Atari staff standing near a Pong machine. Oh yeah, the IGN editors of the Twilight Princess reveal. Yeah, if there was like a Japanese Library of Congress, you would put that there. That was a bigger meme there for sure. Jessica Chobot licking a PSP. Yeah. Yes, the Superstar Game Dev cover of PC Gamer. The fucking the new Game Gods episode. Yeah, the Rich DeVizio dressed as Quan Chi holding a beer. Well, not dressed as Quan Chi, just in a t-shirt, but wearing the Quan Chi makeup, right? Just the side cabinet art from Mortal Kombat 4, the big Quan Chi head. Definitely that. You know, are there some you know, N-Gage side talking photos? Do you do a separate exhibition of side talking photos? Does that belong in there? I think you would do, you know, there are big moments of game reveals, like you know, like Miyamoto on stage about to unveil Breath of the Wild, or, you know, or no, sorry, I was fucking Wind Waker, actually. I'd probably go with something like that. Topher in Indiana writes in and says, so there was a list of games along with the Unreal Tournament stuff of games that Epic was going to be shutting down and removing, and a number of Harmonix games were on that list. And he says, unfortunately, Rock Band Blitz hasn't been working for a while. I experienced this problem, and below is the response I got. The game will load, and when trying to connect to servers, will immediately show an error message. I haven't looked into it, but I would be surprised if some people have set up some way to bypass this issue. And he's forwarded a support email from Harmonix here. Says, thank you for taking the time to log this report and for all the valuable information you've provided so far. We don't have an ETA for a fix at this time, but we've taken note of your experience and logged it for investigation. In the meantime, we're going to close this ticket. This is from September of 2020. So I guess Rock Band Blitz has been broken for a while, which is unfortunate. Oh yeah, that is not Rich DeVizio holding a beer. That's what is that? A caffeine-free Diet Pepsi? What is that? Is it just a regular Diet Pepsi? I don't know. That was a long time ago. Different cans. Well, I wonder if you could play Rock Band Blitz offline, and it's just when it has to connect to Rock Central is when it breaks. But I assume that requires an online connection because it has to validate DLC, and I think all of the music in that game is technically considered DLC. Let's see what else we got here. Tom writes in and says, I own a poster for Revolution X that I like a great deal, but is simply too sexy to display. Do you have any pieces of video game memorabilia that you like a great deal, but are simply too sexy to display? Huh. No, I almost bought one of these Revolution X posters off of eBay. And didn't. But that comes up once a year or so. I go like, oh man, what if I got this sick Revolution X poster? But it has a pretty lady on it. It's garage material. It's working on cars material. You know, with the Budweiser bikini girls poster and the picture of the girl leaning on the Lamborghini and the cat hanging from the tree that says just hang in there, you know, like all that stuff. Yeah, do I have any pieces of video game memorabilia that I like a great deal that are simply too sexy to display? No, not that I can think of. I do have a Reiko Nagase calendar from a billion years ago that I never put up, even in the year when it was new. That I haven't looked through. I was like, I don't know, what is all these pictures of her leaning over Ridge Racer cars? I'm like, that's fucking neat. But is it for R4? I think it is for R4. I'd have to go look. It's been a long time. I know exactly where I just saw that calendar, but it is still in the plastic that it came in. So I haven't really investigated it. Let's see. Matt from PA writes in and says, is it just me or do games just never seem to have a good Molotov or one that seems powerful enough? Most of the time, Molotovs in games don't feel like they do enough damage or overall don't feel right. Do you have any insight on this? Thanks. Yeah, Molotov cocktails. It's fire. It's fucking, you're covered in fire when it hits you, man. That's fucking bad. But in terms of like their murdering capabilities, and you know, Call of Duty is as guilty as this as anything. They don't feel like they do enough damage to human soldiers. And compared to the other types of grenades that you could get. The one thing I'll say though is I think if you throw a Molotov cocktail at a car in that game, the car immediately explodes. And so it's good at the beginning of matches on that map with all the cars, and that's about it. But yeah, no, I think like I think you could put Molotov cocktails near shotguns in terms of like these things are way more fucked up in real life than they usually are in video games. Right? But you do occasionally, yeah, Molotov cocktails are great for games with zombies because they all stand in a nice tight cluster and you set them all on fire and they do what zombies do when they catch on fire, which is die. Again. But yeah, I think, you know, I'm trying to think of other recent examples. Call of Duty again is the kind of the most recent example I can think of. Just like, yeah, they don't seem useful. Tom writes in, says, what's your insight into the shifting power center around Sony's games division? I feel like post the failure of the PlayStation 3, what was traditionally the Japanese-led games division shifted to the US, while the European branch continued just like making racist PSP ads or whatever they were doing. However, at some point during the lead up to the PS5, things seem to have shifted to Europe as the center of power. What's your read on Sony's internal politicking? I think you've got it right. I think, yeah, and I don't know if this is necessarily like a direct response to the nature of the PlayStation 3, but you know, I think, you know, you've probably heard Mark Cerny tell the, well, at least I heard Mark Cerny tell the tale. I assume that was part of something more public, but that basically, you know, at some point during the PlayStation 3 generation, as they started scoping out what the PS4 was going to be, Cerny and some other folks went around and met with developers and were like, what do you want out of a game platform? What should we do? Not that they didn't have any idea, but it was like, hey, is this something good? Do you think that this would be the right thing? Do you need more RAM here? It's not uncommon for console manufacturers to do this. Epic demanding twice the amount of RAM, like that, that sort of stuff. Or asking for it, I guess. Demanding is a strong word. And I think that the end result there was that you had a PlayStation 4 that felt more like an American console because of the parts they were using and how they kind of moved to the architecture that they moved to, and the stuff they've stuck with the PlayStation 5 and everything with that. It just felt like a more Western machine than the cell processor and the emotion engine and all of that shit that that drove the PlayStation 2 and 3 marketing, at least the marketing for the devices. And so I think you had a time there where, yes, the Japanese division kind of played the background a little bit, but like, my understanding is that even on PS5 here, that a lot of the, maybe it changed for PS5. I'm pretty sure it was the case for PlayStation 4, was that a lot of the system software stuff still comes out of Japan, or at least for PS4 it did. I think that's still the case. That maybe they have designers in the States, but generally speaking, that work is coming out of Japan. Which in some ways is like, that doesn't feel like that would be the aspect of the console that I feel like could use the most Westernization, even still. But yeah. So yeah, the US felt ascendant there for a while. You had Jack in his role, and then Sean Layden took over. I don't know what really happened once Layden kind of got the chair in the US, but it sure seems like a number of people left, and a number of things changed. Maybe just whoever the decision makers were worldwide, maybe they didn't like Layden. I don't know. And so Jim Ryan had an opportunity to kind of rise up through the ranks and get that job. And then not long after that, when they kind of globalized a lot of their stuff, not all of it, there's still plenty of regional Sony people, but they did so in such a way that Jim Ryan became the guy. And Jack Tretton is such a dynamic figure. He was such a entertaining individual in that role that I think anyone coming into those roles was going to have a very hard time with that. But at the end of the day, the entertainment aspect of Jack Tretton on stage is only one part of the role, right? And I can't tell you how he did internally or anything like that. I don't really know. Or at least I don't know well enough to really repeat stuff. But I never heard anyone say anything untoward, unkind about Jack Tretton and working with him and all that. So the other guys that kind of came later, they ain't Jack Tretton, I guess. But you saw some of this with I think the Japanese companies are only going to have so much patience or only so much use for a guy that is like the entertaining frontman. You take a look at Reggie at Nintendo, like everyone loves that dude, but like look at the Nintendo that he presided over, and it wasn't all roses, it wasn't all bangers during that time frame. And you could see a point where Nintendo might be like, hey, maybe we need to get somebody else in this role. Maybe we need to do something here. But who knows? who knows, right? That's all a big mess. But the Reggie stuff just became a meme almost at the expense of people talking about Nintendo's games. And that probably doesn't fly. But yeah, you know, the Sony stuff in particular, Sony feels weird now. I don't know. Like, it's still the same people, you know, like the people that I talk to at Sony about, you know, PR people, game releases. It is still that same squad, and there's really good people in those roles. There's awesome folks in those positions. They are personable and easy to talk to, and you know, and great. But yeah, there's just the Sony feels weird now ever since they made those changes and kind of and ever since Jim Ryan took over. Like, it just feels like a different, strange company now. By comparison to, you know, the PlayStation 4 era really felt like that. The PlayStation 4 era felt like Sony had figured out, like, hey man, we maybe made some bad calls on the PlayStation 3, and we've got to be better partners to our partners in the third party world, and we've got to work with them better. We've got to be better at this. We've got to be better at that. We've got to make sure that we're marketing the console properly. And the PlayStation 4 was fucking awesome. They did a fucking great job with that thing. It didn't hurt, you know, that Microsoft really shit the bed at the exact same time, right? I mean, fuck. Microsoft practically handed it to them, but it would have been very easy for Sony to fuck it up if they had not had everything together. And they'd had everything together. They had good people in place, and they were able to, you know, put people out there that talked about the games. They had their indie strategy dealing with third parties and self-publishing felt fresh. Obviously, Xbox has ID at Xbox, and that is doing great as well. But like, at the time, that felt like Sony going like, oh, we need games from all sorts of different developers, big and small. And it's a big tent, and we should let everyone into our big tent. And now you've got, like, the PlayStation 5 store feels like a fucking mess. And yeah, Sony does market some indie games, but it doesn't feel like as core to the strategy as maybe it was. And part of that is, I think, because, like, again, if you remember, you know, remember how long it took developers to get games out for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, and how that was a factor of, there was like some amount of hand wringing in the industry around that time, around like, hey, we're not sure if people want consoles anymore, because, you know, investors have been barking at them about the iPhone for so many years. At that point, they're like, well, the iPhone, there's so many more iPhones. That's where gaming is going. We don't even know if the kids today are going to buy a console at all, because they're just playing games on their damn phones. And what the fuck are we going to do? And you know, and so, like, everything was up in the air in a weird way at that point. And to account for the lack of big third party games, like, Sony had a very aggressive and very smart indie strategy to pursue those sorts of games and those sorts of developers. And I think that worked out incredibly well for them. It was very well timed, and it was awesome. So yeah, I mean, good on them for that. They read the room really well, and I don't think that they're reading the room quite as well anymore, but the room got weird. So, you know, what are you going to do? Let's see. What else do we got here? We'll get a couple more of these emails in. Looks like Twitch is working again. And TikTok is still working over it. My phone is probably on fire over here, live streaming like this for this long. Hot phone. Jeff from Queens writes in and says, happy anniversary. What are you doing to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the Star Citizen Kickstarter? Man. I'm going to put another $50,000 into that to make sure I get the insured ships. That's how I'm celebrating. There are people out there playing Star Citizen and probably enjoy. Are those ships NFTs by now? They are, right? I mean, they put their ships on the blockchain. That seems like something they would do to raise another $50 million. I don't know. What a fucking disaster. No, but like not a disaster for them because they raised a fuckload of money. But like, you just look at it and go like, this doesn't seem good. This doesn't seem good for people. This doesn't seem like a good business. This seems like not necessarily a grift per se, but like it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. And every time you look at it, you go like, this still seems really fucked. Grant writes in, I think I strongly disagree here, but I don't know. He says, wouldn't a new Desert Strike be great today? Maybe if even in VR, as strategy games seem to work well in VR. Desert Strike is awesome. The game, Jungle Strike, great. Urban Strike, cool. Future Strike, the game that went on to become Future Cop LAPD or whatever the fuck it was. A very different type of game, but still kind of cool. Desert Strike is a very specific isometric type of game that doesn't get made anymore. And if you just made another one of those games that looked better, I don't know that people would be attracted to it. I think it would look too much like hey, we rebooted a retro game, and it's still that same retro game you know and love. And like at that point, it's been so long since I played Desert Strike, then I'll probably just go play Desert Strike. So what do you do to that franchise? And people at EA spent time actually working on this problem. People at EA actually pitched a new Desert Strike, but it was for phones. I saw Desert Strike on a phone. I'm trying to think if I saw a screenshot or if I saw it actually running. I think I saw screenshots. But yes, people at EA prototyped a Desert Strike for iPhone. And it didn't go. And that was the kind of the big era for EA saying like, if it doesn't make us X number of millions of dollars, it's not worth our time. And yeah, I guess like, but yeah, so it was hard to get a game like Desert Strike greenlit, and ultimately that team that project didn't happen, and they moved on. But yeah, it feels like there was an era there that if you were going to make a new Desert Strike, it would almost have to be on phones, and I don't want that. So I don't know. I don't know that a new Desert Strike would actually be a great game today. If you updated it and did all this stuff, you would make it a behind the back or first person helicopter simulator, and then you're just making Comanche or something, which like, that's cool. Comanche was neat. Voxels are all the rage. Let's do a new Comanche. That's okay. From the developers of Teardown and the Embracer Group comes Comanche reboot. Think about it. They already got this engine with you probably fucking Steam Workshop me a fucking helicopter for Teardown, and let's make a new voxel Comanche. Oh man, Comanche was cool. People don't know. God damn it. Let's see. Before we hit the bricks here, let's see if we got a couple of more. Phil in Maryland writes in about the Toe Jam and Earl movie. If you remember, they announced that they were going to make a... Well, that's right. They did do a new Comanche. Ugh. Comanche 4. Yeah, I forgot all about that. Super Raven on the Discord points it out. Like, yeah, yes. Yeah. Okay, how about a new good Comanche? How about that? Was listening to the podcast part about the Toe Jam and Earl movie, and I had an idea. They should absolutely end up stealing the infamous Wu-Tang album from the Farmer Bro, and it ends up becoming the soundtrack to the movie. Long shot, but worth it, says Phil in Maryland. Yeah, sure. Yeah, yes, that would work. Having Toe Jam and Earl have to, or they would accidentally steal it. They wouldn't know that they were going to steal it, but they'd be like, we need to collect the funk. We've got to get all this funk. And then they end up with that Wu-Tang album. Sure. Yeah. Yes. Or, a different Wu-Tang, yes. Yes, I think that's a good idea. I think that would be a funny bit. Ryan in Atlanta writes in and says, I'm sitting here watching your Atari Jaguar stream, and you mentioned that at no point did it seem like the Jaguar was going to be a factor in the industry. I was wondering if there were any consoles that at the time seemed like they were going to be big factors in the industry and failed, or vice versa. Like, did the Sega CD and 32X seem ill-fated at the time? Or is that the benefit of hindsight speaking? Were people scoffing at the idea of Sony or Microsoft entering the console space? Yes and yes. So, yeah, Ryan, we've been talking about a lot of this stuff on Game Boys to Men, which is the Patreon exclusive podcast. You can get over at patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann or dopeassvideogames.com. And we've been talking a lot about the 90s. We're about to do a pair of episodes here over the next month here that are going to really focus on like 3DO and CDI and the CDTV and multimedia on the PC, your MPC 1, your MPC 2. But we've been talking about Sega a lot because, I think when Glenn and I first started, or, when I first started getting into this, Sega was on top. They were, the Genesis was out, Sonic the Hedgehog was out, Nintendo seemed like it was old kids stuff for kids, and no one cared. And, and this most recent episode we did, which we'll be hitting this week, is about Nintendo kind of finding their way again, and the re-rise, Nintendo striking back, if you will, later on in the 16-bit era, and kind of how they went forward as Sega started to fall apart. The Sega CD did not seem ill-fated at the time of its launch. It seemed like the future at the time of its launch. Even those fucking FMV games were interesting then, but they were interesting once in some cases, and so it took maybe 6 months, maybe a year before the Sega CD really seemed like it was suddenly a bad idea. Once you had that second generation of software coming out and you're like, oh, maybe I don't want any of this stuff. Maybe this stuff is actually bad. Maybe Sega doesn't really have it anymore. And Sega kind of lost their grip on, the kind of pop culture zeitgeist that they had seized onto around this time. And so by the time the 32X was coming out, the bloom was already off the rose. It was just like no one was, like, Nintendo had come out and with a bunch of SNES games that people cared about. Everyone was talking about what was going to be next. By the time the 32X came out, we're like, fuck it, the Saturn is out right around the corner. And so the 32X seemed ill-fated out of the gate. But the Sega CD at the time, really stood out. It was like, oh man, this is dramatically different than the games we're getting. Like, oh, we're getting better versions of some Genesis games with better music. That's cool too. Sort of like what we were seeing on the TurboGrafx CD, but with higher profile games, higher profile licenses. That said, I think when you go back to the Sega CD versions of stuff like Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam, they don't really fucking hold up. MK1 does. But NBA Jam, like, it's still not, it's not like it's all the audio from the arcade game. It's not like it's all there. But in things that seemed ill-fated at the time, I think the 3DO always seemed like it was never going to go anywhere. Like, out of the gate, those games seemed bad. Like, the original Need for Speed seemed shitty. Madden didn't seem great. Like, they just didn't look great. Plus, they were insanely expensive. They were so the consoles were too much money. And so when you combine those things, like you're just like, the 3DO is not going to go anywhere at this price point. The Neo Geo, honestly, felt exactly the same way. It was like, wait a minute, you're going to sell me this fucking side-scrolling beat 'em up that I'm going to beat in one sitting for $300 fucking dollars, and the console is $700? Okay, what? How much money am I spending on this? Like, the Neo Geo seemed like a fucking disaster at launch, and it is still a bad deal in a lot of cases, you know. But at the time, the idea that you were going to go spend $700 on a fucking Neo Geo, and they were going to go, here you go, it's a Neo Geo with one controller and a copy of Magician Lord. You're like, hey, like, I think Magician Lord is a neat game, but fuck you. You're out of your fucking mind. And the early fighting games, you know, I don't think Fatal Fury was, you know, Fatal Fury Special was good. I don't think Fatal Fury 1 was good. The original King of Fighters was a dicey proposition in some ways. Like, there were just a lot of early Neo Geo games. You were like, okay, like, even if I liked these games for, you know, 50 cents in the arcade, I can't spend $300 fucking dollars on these things. Are you high? Are you fucking crazy? What is wrong with you? It wasn't until, I'm going to say, like, Samurai Showdown 2. That I was like, man, this is a fucking amazing. You know, Samurai Showdown 1, I guess I probably felt this way, but that was the first case of like, here's a Neo Geo game where I'm like, this game is fucking awesome. Boy, I wish I could play a great home version of this. And they ported it around, and some of them were okay, but not amazing. There was definitely like I love playing this game in the arcade, and I sure would like to have this exact version at home. But at these prices, there's no chance of me ever doing that. You know, fast forward to me taking multiple trips to Japan every year, and suddenly you end up owning a Neo Geo, and suddenly you end up owning 30 different games for it, because the used prices in Japan were fucking awesome. It's not like this anymore because collectors have, the collectors like to collect, and so the market has changed. But I bought multiple copies of Samurai Showdown 2. Samurai Spirits 2, I guess I should say, for the equivalent of $5, $3. One year I bought like 4 copies of it and brought them all home and gave them as gifts to friends that didn't even own a Neo Geo, but they were just big fans of Samurai Showdown 2. And because you could get a used copy of it for fucking $2. And those things used to be hundreds of dollars. So it was like I felt like I was stealing them. I was like, I should get all of these I can. I should be hoarding copies of Samurai Showdown 2. What the fuck is wrong with me? And I think I still have 2 copies of it. But then I also paid $1,100 for a copy of Mark of the Wolves. At the height of it. At the height of me being fucking bonkers for that shit. I was like, yeah, man. Because I bought all the cheap games. I had purchased all of the early Neo Geo games that were now $2, $5, $20, $30, $80. Like, eventually you work your way up to, you're like, man, I bought all the cheap games. What now? You're like, what now is I'm going to fucking splash out and I'm going to fucking go home with a fucking copy of Mark of the Wolves for the Neo Geo. This is before it had been ported anywhere else. It was the only way to get it was to play it there. And it was fucking awesome. And it still is fucking awesome. I do not get like into the physical artifact nature of old video games. I don't need to handle 8-bit Nintendo cartridges anymore. There's a certain thrill I get with the Famicom disk system of putting the discs into the Famicom Twin, and the discs themselves are cool. And the art for Metroid in Japan is so good that having just that disc with the art on it is awesome. But Neo Geo carts are the other thing, because those things are so bulky and heavy that they feel like they were worth it. You're like, yeah, man, look, feel the heft on this. Like, yeah, this is serious business. We're fucking gaming over here, god damn it. And then they would port Mark of the Wolves to the Dreamcast like less than a year later, and be like, oh, fuck. But at that point we were playing a lot of Neo Geo games in the office, and so we played a lot of Mark of the Wolves, we played a lot of King of Fighters. I bought new copies. I was still, when there were still Neo Geo games coming out when I had my Neo Geo, and so I bought like the last 2 King of Fighters and SNK versus Capcom. I bought those carts new for a few $100 a piece. And because at that point, I had been working for a number of years, and I had set aside some money, and I had some disposable income because I was still fucking, well, no, I had moved out by then. I wasn't living at home anymore. But I was a single guy, gainfully employed, and I love video games, so I did the damn thing, and it was cool. But now, there are a billion different ways to play those games. But that's the case of like the boxes look good, the manuals look good. Like those are cool to still own, I think. I feel good about owning a lot of those Neo Geo cartridges. In a way that like when I look at a stack of SNES games, I just go like, yeah, man, whatever. Like I might as well be looking at a fucking micro SD card. Because that has all of them on it. Yeah. I don't know. It was a different time, but like the Neo Geo seemed like a disaster out of the gate, and I think it kind of was. But eventually, they had a lot of great fighting games on that thing, and you were like, man, I really want to own one of these. But like, also remember that like the Neo Geo suffered. Well, suffered's maybe the wrong word. Maybe benefited is the right word. The Neo Geo games were emulated and in MAME running well. While the Neo Geo still had new games coming out. When those King of Fighters games, those last couple were coming out, and when SNK versus Capcom were coming out, you could play all the old Neo Geo games in MAME already. And so you could see all that stuff. And it was fucking awesome to just be able to get access to that stuff, considering how unattainable and weird it was. And I remember going to E3 when they were pushing the Neo Geo CD and looking at that and looking at the load times on it and just being like, this ruins this is fucked. Like, this is nothing about the Neo Geo CD seemed enticing either. It was just like, okay, you've taken the one kind of interesting thing about this platform and replaced it with really long fucking load times. Like, okay, this no longer holds any appeal. But even, yes, when Microsoft got in, it seemed like a joke. I've talked about it before. Like the early days, the pre-release days of the Xbox, they just didn't seem like they got it. They didn't seem like they understood. We're gonna look at this. Maybe not this week, but pretty soon here. I have the first OXM demo disc has some videos on it of kind of early days of Xbox and some good footage on there, some good tapes. We're gonna watch that one of these days, and we're gonna watch that one of these days. It's fucking weird, but yeah, the early days of Xbox were they. I remember going to CES because they said, "Hey, we've got something that you might be interested in at CES this year." Wink, wink, and going out there and seeing the Xbox for the first time and being like, okay. They didn't really show a lot of games there. They were just like, yeah, we've got a console. And then when they started showing games and stuff, it was like, this. Okay, yeah, I think Dead or Alive 3 seems fun. And Halo is, I don't know, all right. I've said it before. They were like pissed that we weren't like falling all over ourselves for Halo. And they went to our bosses. They went above our heads. And they were like, your team, I don't get it, man. We're showing them the future of video gaming, and they're just kind of sitting there stone-faced, which, like, that was our job, to sit there stone-faced. We were not there to go like, hell yeah, buddy, and high-five them about like, hell yeah, bro, you're making video games. Like, we're there to assess and report. But also what they were showing, you're like, okay, I don't know. Will Halo be cool? Maybe. Well, I think at that point, it was very easy to say like, Are there good console shooters? Yeah, some. I don't know. People like Turok, I guess. And so yeah, like it was very easy to be skeptical about Halo, especially considering its weird long road to the market and Microsoft being new, and nothing about what they were showing about Halo looked like the future of fucking shooters. I think when that game came out, like it's all right. I don't know. Halo 1, it's fucking cool, I guess. If you weren't playing games on PC at the time, sure, it was great. But I look at it the same, in a similar way as GoldenEye, of like, yeah, okay, if you were not exposed to the fucking raw, uncut shit on PC, then I bet Halo seemed pretty awesome. If you were in college and had an Xbox that was on your college dorm's LAN so that you could play LAN games of fucking Halo with people while I was over here playing fucking PC shooters on the fucking internet, like, all right, yeah, I guess go play your fucking LAN game, guys. Have fun. But it was a cool campaign, you know, obviously the story, yeah, but you know, that's all part of, like, I didn't like Halo until Halo 3 came out. And I thought Halo 3 was fucking badass. Like they had so much different shit in it. It was so cool. It was just a fucking great game. Halo 2, no thank you. I remember that I remember playing the Halo 2 campaign. I didn't review the game, so I didn't have to play it in a timely fashion. So I played it later in the year when we were on our holiday break. And I sat there and I played through Halo 2 in like 1 or 2 sittings. And when I got to the end of it and saw the fucking plant thing, I just cackled. I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I had heard that I had heard that maybe the campaign was not awesome, but playing through that game and I was just like, are you fucking shitting me? This is this game? Fuck this. Oh my God. But yeah, Halo 3 had the Forge mode, had all that cool shit in it. You know, hunting for skulls and getting achievements and doing, you know, like Halo 3 is a fucking great fucking game. Fun co-op, fucking just all that cool shit. All that cool shit. And then Sony, I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, the early days of PlayStation. I'm going to say, like, maybe before you saw the PlayStation in action, it was very easy to say things like, what the fuck does Sony know about video games? We just saw Panasonic get in with the 3DO. That thing's a fucking shit show. What the fuck is Sony going to do? And I remember I was working for a magazine, and I remember someone else at the magazine in sales was like, hey, so Sony's got this new thing in the works. They're calling it PlayStation. I think I can get you in to see it. You know, they're going to announce it, or they're going to show it here in a little bit. They haven't yet really, but but I think I can maybe even get you one. I was like, yes, you should. Yes, please get me one of these PlayStations I've heard so much about. Because, you know, like you only knew PlayStation name is like part of like the whole SNES thing. The SNES CD stuff and everything. So the idea that they were doing this was like, okay, yes, show me a PlayStation, get me one of these, get me in there to see it. And then the magazine got shut down before we all got laid off, and that was that. But I've told the story about going to E3, or maybe, I guess this would have had to have been CES. No, I'm a little hazy on it, but like there was a year at a trade show. It was probably E3. It was probably the first E3 where Sega had a bunch of Saturn stuff out and were letting people play it. Sony did not have a major presence at the show, on the show floor, but the PlayStation was out in Japan. And there was a booth. It was like some tiny hole in the wall booth. They made joysticks. Some hardware, you know, just like low rent, you know, there's like, they made joysticks. It wasn't, I don't even think it was a joystick company that you would have heard of. It was not like it was, here's Mad Cats or Interact or whoever. And they had a PlayStation set up with Battle Arena Toshinden running. And that's pretty much all I wanted to do that entire show. Because when you saw that thing running, Toshinden, of all things, you took one look at it and you were like, man, the Saturn is fucked. Like, fuck that thing. You'd go look at Panzer Dragoon and you'd be like, this seems like a cool game, but it's not it looks kind of fucked. Like it looks grainy. Like it just doesn't look right. And Toshinden, by comparison, keep in mind we're talking about pre-release versions of Saturn games. It was very easy to be like, man, Toshinden, like the polygons, the look of this game is so much more than anything that is happening on the fucking Saturn. It was very easy to just be like, they're fucking dead. And then Glenn had a PlayStation. Glenn had a Japanese PlayStation. And I don't know if he was borrowing it or what the fuck the deal was, but we had one year when we were going to E3. Before it was out in the States. That would have had to have been E3 95. And he had, it was like, I think it was Toshinden and Ridge Racer, or maybe it was even just Ridge Racer. And we just sat there in the place we were staying with it hooked up to the TV there. And it was fucking mind blowing, especially by comparison. But like, you know, but yeah, basically once you saw the PlayStation in action, that was enough. That was enough for me to go like, all right, well, I'm taking, you know, I took 30 Genesis games and took them to the fucking EB because they had some deal where they were like, if you give us 30 Genesis games, we'll give you a PlayStation. And I was like, word, fucking here, take fucking 40. I don't, like, give me one of these goddamn things. Yeah, the PlayStation, as soon as you saw it running, as soon as you saw real games running on it, it was just like, fuck everything else, basically. All right. This is our last question. We're gonna wrap it up. This is from C. I don't know if this is the same C that sent the energy drinks into the PO box, but thank you both, or thank you if it's anyway. Which of these two albums is better? Psychopathic Ryda's Dumpin' or Violent J's Wizard of the Hood? Well, it's Dumpin'. It's the Psychopathic Rydas, which is, if you don't know, that is the Insane Clown Posse side project where they pretend to be gangsters. And they rap over gangster rap beats. Like it's, you know, it's like a mixtape style thing where they are, you know, rapping over Pistol Grip Pump and stuff like that. And, I would take Dumpin' over Wizard of the Hood 10 times out of 10. I think Wizard of the Hood is corny. As opposed to Dumpin' by the Psychopathic Riders, a serious work of art. I want to say there was another Psychopathic Riders album after that, but I'm not as familiar with their later work. And they all adopted fake names like Full Clip and stupid shit like that. It's very dumb. But hey, they stole good beats. So at bare minimum, you're like, okay, well, all right. At least I'm listening to this West Coast shit. All right. Well, that's a good email to go out on as any. Thank you to C for writing in with that. And that's going to do it for this week's show. Be back on Twitch on Wednesday and Friday doing some streaming. There's a new episode of Game Boys to Men in the works. It has been recorded. I just got to get it out the door. And also Game of the Year stuff coming up here. That'll be hitting your Patreon feed in terms of people in the advisory panel. I will be sending out something on Patreon to catch the people who are not on the Discord to see if they want to contribute some categories. And then once I've got a list of categories together, I will be having patrons vote on nominating games and so on and so forth. We'll take a poll, as it were, and see what wins. And then I've got my list as well as things that I feel strongly about, and we'll have a podcast about it one of these weeks here. I haven't locked out a date because I'm a little bit behind on some of this stuff, and I just gotta find the time to knock it out. So look for that coming soon to your Patreon feeds. That's patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann if you want to hop on board. There's never been a better time to hop on board. The broadcast, the train. I don't have a train button. was like, I gotta reach over here and hit a button for that, but I don't have a good one.
Mushroom
that's not,
Kingdom, here we come.
That's not a good button for that. That's not a good button for that. All right, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow on Twitch, but also next week, of course, with the podcast. So come on through and keep on listening. Thanks, everybody. Happy New Year. And I hope you're off to a solid start for your year. And I'm doing my thing, and it's all working out. Gangbusters. Gangbusters. Anyway, be back next week. I'll see you then.